Welcome, everyone, to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. See, we got a good group of people here already. Dee, Maureen, Rammer Jammer, Kat, Bethany. Who else do I see? Maureen from across the pond, like Kat. Good to see. Miss Kim, one of the mods, Miss Kim, welcome. So today, what we're going to do is TMZ got another ransom note. We can go over whether we think that's real or not. And Savannah Guthrie had her first day back at work on the Today Show. And I do wonder if there's a correlation between those two things. First day at work, and all of a sudden TMZ gets another ransom note. Coincidence? I don't know. But what do you think? But we're first going to go into, like I said, what TMZ has to say about the matter. But before we get into that, yes, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Likes are for Shadow, the Night Owl here. Leave your DNA on the like button. Hello there, Hunter and Wendy. And remember to subscribe to the channel. And also super chats, great way to get questions answered and to support the channel. Super stickers, great way to support the channel. And becoming a channel member or gifting memberships give you access to the members-only live streams. I go live usually 5 or 6 nights a week. Often I take Sundays off, but not always. And I usually go live a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern. Yes, it really is, Kat, isn't it? Danielle, welcome. Yes, everyone had a good Easter, I hope. Hello there, Jackie. Mod Livin back. She says, hi all, I miss everyone deeply. It has been the busy season at work, and so I've been MIA with early mornings, and the late start makes it hard. Thankfully, today is timely. How about that? Ruby, like I said, welcome. So let's jump into this TMZ thing here and see what they have to say for themselves.
Welcome to the TMZ podcast. I'm Branson Quirk.
I'm Charlie Nav.
Charlie, how's your Monday going?
Hi, going good. Happy post-Easter.
Post-Easter?
Yeah, I think that's a thing.
What did you do? You were out in Newport, right?
Yeah, I went to my husband's family's house out there. It was such a beautiful day here in California. Apologies to anyone that's not in California and is dealing with snow or terrible weather. But it was beautiful here yesterday in LA, or I guess in Orange County too. And had a really good time. There was an Easter egg hunt.
Nice.
A kid Easter egg hunt, and then an adult Easter egg hunt.
Wow.
One person got the golden egg and won like $100.
Okay, we also had a golden egg.
Oh, okay.
I was in Temecula.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, golden egg. It was like $75 to Trader Joe's.
Oh, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, forces you to buy groceries and be healthy.
I also brought, speaking of healthy, well, I guess you say unhealthy, I brought a lamb cake to my husband's family's house. It's a cake shaped as a lamb.
Oh, okay.
So cutting into it, I felt like it was cruelty.
Like a sacrifice, like the Bible.
Yeah, it did feel like a sacrifice.
Enough small talk.
Big developments.
Big developments. Obviously, Nancy Guthrie, we've been talking about it. We talked about her this morning.
Yeah.
No new updates whatsoever. No new notes coming in. But TMZ, we just received 2 new notes, a couple of new ones. So both are from the same person offering information on the kidnapper. But for the first time, this person is revealing an exact location and claiming that they saw her in Mexico. As we had previously reported, we talked about this before.
So 2 new notes, one of them claiming to have seen her in Mexico. I doubt that's true. I doubt that's true because I think she was probably passed away long before that, is what I had to guess. And they were also saying they're going to get, for half a Bitcoin, they would tell you where Nancy's body is. And they said, don't worry, I'm not involved with it anyway, but somehow I know where the body is. Okay. I'm not sure I'm buying that one either.
It was someone who was claiming to know her whereabouts and know the person that did this.
And saw her
And said that if we sent them 1 Bitcoin, that they would reveal this information.
Yeah. How much is 1 Bitcoin?
Right now, I can't say it live, but maybe 67,000.
Okay.
Last time I saw, so hanging around $60,000 to $70,000. So there's a couple new notes. TMZ received the first note Monday morning today. The same day, by the way, that Savannah Guthrie jumped back on the Today Show, made her re-debut, and it's from that person offering to rat out the kidnappers for nearly 2 months now. They say their demand for 1 Bitcoin to, quote, deliver them on a silver platter still stands. Shortly after we talked about the first note on TMZ Live, though, the person sent a second letter saying, quote, I saw her alive with them in the state of Sonora, Mexico. Do you know where Sonora, Mexico is?
It's the border right below where Nancy Guthrie was living.
Okay.
So, I mean, look, that location would make sense geographically to where she could potentially be. But it's kind of interesting because we're believing that this is a person that already has written in the past.
Right.
And the past times, this person said she was dead, said Nancy was no longer with us. And kind of what they're saying now is almost like they know that they saw her alive with them at one point, we're believing. So just kind of some confusion if this person who claims to know or have seen her, if they're trying to say she is alive or she's no longer with us, whatever the case, they are urging somebody to donate or to put money in to this Bitcoin. They're asking for half a Bitcoin now, right?
Half a Bitcoin. But again, suggesting in the first note.
Great point by Ruby here. We got some smart people in the flock of black sheep here. So if you're watching this out there, one of the 152 people here so far, say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat. Very supportive and encouraging group, if not eccentric as well. But I would have it no other way, like I always say. And Ruby says, why would you settle for, it's not even 67,000, it's half of that, so 33.5, when you can get over 1 million? Makes no sense. Just like this case. Well said, Ruby. Exactly right. Savannah was offering $1 million for, I don't even think that was for her body alive at that point. They just wanted to know where she was. They wanted her returned home. So if they really had that information, or at the very least could just tell them where Nancy is, why not reach out to Savannah, right? Well said, Ruby. Well said.
That Nancy is quote, she is dead.
Right.
We did send this first note to the FBI, but they're not convinced it's a legit note.
Right. Otherwise, they would have, the FBI would have just been like, here's, 60,000 or 30,000 or whatever.
Right.
And like try to get the information. Look, the risk is that the FBI loses money and this person is bogus and disappears off the face of the planet.
Right.
But do you take that risk and just contribute or, put the money in just to see if something comes out of this? I mean, like you mentioned, Savannah is back on the Today Show. She returned today. Her mother has been missing for 2 months. 2 months.
February 1st.
There hasn't really been a whole lot of movement. Remember, they kind of found some people who they thought were connected. They both weren't.
Yeah.
They've been released. No one's behind bars right now. They haven't found her body. They really don't have, at least from what we've seen, they don't really have any leads.
Yeah.
It's starting to dip into the cold case basket.
Yeah.
Which is so frustrating. So I think if you have nothing else, just give the 60,000 or just give the 30,000. I feel like Savannah is a woman that is wealthy. She herself thinks that it's possible her mother was targeted because of her, because of her fame, because of her wealth. I mean, what is it to the Guthrie family to put in 30 or 60 grand?
What's the principle of it? The USA, they say this, you've heard this in the movies, we don't negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah.
We don't do it because then it would encourage other terrorists to do the exact same thing, jump on our planes, hold planes for ransom, whatever it is. you can't encourage that behavior. So if we're going to start publicly, here's the thing.
Right.
Publicly, there's no information that they paid anything, right? But like, who knows what went on behind the scenes?
Well, but this person's still writing in, so you
this specific person.
Yeah.
What about the two ransom notes that Savannah believes, and she just talked about this with Hoda, believes are legit?
But those
who knows if she sent money to
those Bitcoin
people?
Accounts are public,
right? And we didn't see money go in or out.
Right.
There's just a lot here, and I'm with you though. I believe that you're going to regret the rest of your life if you did not at least try and send the money to that address. Because think of it, what if they had?
Right.
In those few days, it was shortly after the kidnapping. What if they did and Nancy returned the next week? That's a very hard thing to deal with. I can't even imagine.
And just her returning back to work today with not having any closure.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you go on? That is so challenging to come back to work and try to have a somewhat normal life, but your mom is gone and you have no idea what happened to her.
I had a dream like that recently where I lost somebody. No, it wasn't my mom, but someone close to me. And like I for that dream, that moment, I felt that in my stomach. I have very vivid dreams. I felt that in my stomach. And that's something that I can't even imagine like living with,
right?
More so going back to work. It's also important to note this person clearly senses the FBI's disbelief that this person who sent these notes, saying in the first letter, it's, quote, unbelievable that millions have been wasted, and yet here I am willing to deliver them on a silver platter since the 11th of February for a Bitcoin, but I am disregarded as a scam. They are free and the case is frozen, but the egos remain hot when it comes to me. Arrogance at its finest. This person
sounds like an antagonistic troll. So, hey, bud, why don't you reach out to Savannah for 1 million? What the hell's wrong with you? Like, makes no sense.
And also said that the reason that they're asking for a Bitcoin is because they want to be able to protect themselves in case these people come after them. May that be legal fees, hiding out somewhere for protection, because
we also don't
dangerous.
We don't know this person's background, right?
And I guess I could buy that, because I have said before that, yeah, it can be dangerous for someone to reach out and to come forward because now there's a target. Even so, even while that's correct, it could also be an opportunistic exploiter, and they are reaching out this way because if you're an opportunistic exploiter, it's going to be harder to detect anyway. So I still don't necessarily think it means it's real.
What if they are, I'm just throwing it out there, what if they're illegal?
Yeah.
And are scared to give information because they don't want to notify authorities that they're not even allowed to be here. Or, there could be other factors as to why this person doesn't want to go directly to the FBI.
Yeah.
But the fact that this person wants money, I mean, I would be so open to giving information for free if I had it.
But it's Bitcoin. I get it. Bitcoin's untraceable. That's the way to go about this. That's what it would be. But Bitcoin is like the key factor in a scam. Any scam, cryptocurrency,
because it's
scam.
Untraceable.
You know what I mean? And this person did try to distance themselves from the kidnapping, had no in any way part of it,
connection,
claiming they've been out of the U.S. for more than 5 years and had nothing to do with this, quote, horrific crime, is what they said.
Yeah.
In the second note, the person claims they're not motivated by greed whatsoever and insists, quote, I want what's fair, to live peacefully, and want enough.
And remember, Bitcoin is traceable, but what happens is when you spread it out to other coins and privacy projects, it becomes much more difficult to trace with every transaction. So if you're smart, what you would do is you would divvy it up into like 10 different wallets instantly. And again, it's just going to be harder for them to track at that point.
To start my life again quietly without having to join a witness protection program. So yeah, that's the question too. Why does this person care so much? But then there's also money.
Right. I mean, look, presumably if this person knows the people that captured Nancy Guthrie and kidnapped her, you probably know some bad people. And if you're in a crew with bad people, you might be a bad person yourself.
If you really want to, whatever you believe, what religion you are, you believe in God. If you're trying to do the right thing here, money doesn't matter here.
No.
Do the right thing.
Right.
And I'm telling you, giving is way more of a blessing than receiving.
Absolutely.
So give this information, like put it to God, you know, like if you believe in God.
To the person that wrote in, if you are watching our podcast right now, we, meaning me and Branson on the TMZ podcast, are encouraging you to just forget the money and just do the right thing and just give it up for free. Just either write into us, post it from an alias on social media or whatever. I mean, I get why people want money. A lot of people are motivated by money.
Well,
but for something like this, just say it.
Right.
Help out a family.
I know. And it's important to note too that the reason this person won't come to the table here is because he's worried about the FBI. He doesn't trust them. He doesn't trust their reward whatsoever, and he doesn't trust them at all. I mean, who knows what kind of background this person has? Like you said, could be a hardcore criminal could be somebody on the wanted list.
Totally.
For all we know.
Yeah.
So witness protection program could be like you're going to jail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know what's going on here, but
yeah, crazy. What do you guys think? Should this person give up the information with no money? Do you think they should get their money? Because there is a reward, right?
Yeah, there is a reward. I don't want to say the exact dollar amount because I don't have it right here, but I know that it's more than a whole Bitcoin.
Right.
100% more than a full Bitcoin. So yeah. All right. Well, we will keep you updated on this. The fact that there's new ransom notes coming in, not ransom, but there's new notes coming in.
Yeah.
Kind of gives me hope a little bit.
Like new interest, maybe closer to solving or at least knowing a little bit
just what
happened.
Like that closure is a blessing.
Absolutely.
Like you need that to move on with your life, you know? So we'll keep you updated tomorrow morning. Hopefully there's something new. Cotton will be on here. But Taylor Frankie Paul.
Yeah, Taylor Frankie Paul.
I'll let you take this a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. She is cutting ties officially with the Mormon Church, which I think is like a little funny because I don't think anyone really thought she was still connected. But obviously remember who she is. She was on the Mormon Wives.
All right. We don't really need to go over Taylor Frankie Paul at this point. We went over her on another video briefly. Not that much to go over there.
That's why you had the PIO.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. I really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. I really appreciate all of your support.
Also, yes, make sure you check out Brian Etten's channel, support his work. Like my video here, likes are free. Spank that like button if you're feeling a little bit frisky, or leave your DNA of choice on the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And say hello, most importantly, to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. Very lively group.
Of my channel. Today is day 65 in the search for Nancy Guthrie, and there is some new news that just came down a little while ago. TMZ is now reporting that they have received yet another ransom note, and they're giving some very specific details of what that note said. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Also, Savannah Guthrie was back on the Today Show for the first time since her mother, Nancy Guthrie, disappeared. And one thing that I'm wondering is it just a coincidence that TMZ has received this new alleged ransom note on the same day that Savannah Guthrie went back to work? Look, I don't know if this ransom note is real. I think most of the ransom notes have been fake. I think that TMZ has overblown a lot of these notes. And I'm going to get to exactly what it says in a second. But I have wondered if...
And I would agree with Brian on that note. I think TMZ also has overblown those notes. It's just kind of a sneaky way to get more attention, clicks, views. That's why it was surprising to me that Savannah said she thought any of them were real. I'm under the impression none of them are real. But chat, what do you think? Do you think any of these ransom notes are real? Press 1 if you think they are. Press 2 if you think none of them are real. So again, 1 if you think any of the ransom notes are real. 2 if you think none of them are real.
When Savannah Guthrie went back to work, would that spark new interest in the case? Would that spark whoever did this to somehow do something differently or react differently? So it's something that's kind of been in the back of my mind. I was wondering if there was going to be some kind of development today. So anyway, I'll get to the TMZ note in a minute. First, I do want to reference, though, Savannah, going back to the Today Show this morning. She said that she had received many letters, that she had received so much kindness. She said, "Good morning. Welcome to Today on this Monday morning. We are so glad you started your week with us, and it is good to be home." She wore yellow, and she later went outside, you know how the Today Show anchors do, and was taking pictures with fans outside. And there were all these people who had signs saying, "Welcome back, Savannah." And there was no real direct mention of Nancy Guthrie or of the investigation or anything, but it seemed emotional, obviously, with her first day back after everything that she has been through, and was obviously took an enormous amount of strength. And she has just been really incredible through this entire thing, in my opinion. Okay, back to this TMZ note. So I'm going to read, I took notes of what TMZ is saying happened here with this latest ransom note. They are saying that a person has been incessantly contacting us. They use that word, incessantly. That they received another letter saying, "I know where her body is and where the kidnapper is. Give us half a Bitcoin and I will tell you." And again, they were saying this person has been very persistent. This is someone who has contacted them in the past, wanted to make clear they have not.
Did you catch that plural usage of us there? Give us half a Bitcoin? Who is us? That would be my question. Who is us?
Nothing to do with it, meaning Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, that they've been out of the country, but that they know who the kidnapper is and where the body is. And Harvey Levin at TMZ says that they've forwarded the letter to the FBI. He said, "My spidey senses say there is something about this guy." So it doesn't seem like he's totally discounting the letter. At one point, Harvey Levin said at one point, the same person who emailed before said time was of the essence. Then,
how am I not surprised that Harvey Levin is the one saying, "Oh yes, I think this one's real"? Of course he does.
Later said time was no longer of the essence, which it seems like is making Harvey Levin think that this is legit, because the person may have sent the first note when they knew that Nancy Guthrie was alive, and then perhaps sent the second note when they knew that Nancy Guthrie was no longer alive. Now, I don't know what to make of these TMZ notes. I've been skeptical. I mean, are they just looking for attention? They make a good headline for TMZ every time they report on one of these. But again, I think the timing is interesting, that this is coming on the same day that Savannah Guthrie is back at the Today Show. And I think it's interesting that Harvey Levin is saying that his spidey senses say there is something about this guy. I also think you have to remember that Savannah Guthrie said when she did her Today Show interview that she believed that 2 of the ransom notes were perhaps legit, which actually surprised me. That was probably the most surprising part of the interview for me, because I did not think that she was going to say that. I just assumed that they realized that none of them were legit, but she said she believes the 2 are legit. And now we have this new note reportedly coming from TMZ on the same day that Savannah Guthrie is back to work. I am joined now by Joe Giacalone, a retired NYPD sergeant. He's been involved in a ton of criminal investigations and cold cases over the years. Joe, thank you so much for joining me. Really, really appreciate it, sir.
Thanks for having me on, Brian.
I first want to ask you about this new development within the last couple of hours. TMZ reports that they've received another ransom note. I've always been a little skeptical of the ransom notes, especially from TMZ. Like, are they just trying to get headlines? But I was just reading through what they said. Harvey Levin said, "My spidey senses say there is something about this guy."
I agree with Brian. I think just more so for headlines. And back in the poll that I gave, only a couple of people think any of the ransom notes are real. The majority of people think none of them are real. And I would agree. I don't think any of them are real.
He's written them before. He's been very persistent. He doesn't claim to be the kidnapper, but says he knows who that person is and where the body is. I mean, what do you make of it?
Well, listen, law enforcement's going to have to try to track down anything they can on this. Like you said, I've took the ransom stuff with a grain of salt from the very beginning, because it was unlike anything we've ever seen before in history and textbooks or what have you. So Listen, they have to do this as part of their investigation, but there's always been a couple of investigations, tracks going on here. Your ransom, stranger kidnapping, family members. I mean, all of these things happen just about in every investigation. So, it's just another thing that they'd have to concentrate on, and quite frankly, probably waste a lot of time trying to figure out what exactly is happening on that end.
With Savannah Guthrie going back on the Today Show this morning, though, I had always kind of wondered in the back of my mind, when she decided to do that, would that have an impact in the investigation? Like, would that spark someone new to come forward? Or if it was like a obsessed Savannah person who did this, would they be sparked to send a new note or something? So the timing is kind of interesting that the same morning she goes back to work after more than 2 months, TMZ suddenly gets a note. I mean, what do you think of that?
Eventually, I mean, she had to go back to work, all right? I mean, I remember standing at a homicide a long time ago at a scene, and I remember the detective.
And again, I think a big reason Savannah went back to work, it stems back from the reason why Nancy had said, if Savannah doesn't feel like she can leave the nest, so to speak, and be out on her own, I didn't do my job as a mother. That's what Nancy said. So I think partially what Savannah's doing with this is she's like, what would Nancy want me to do? Nancy, my mom, would probably want me to go back to work. And like she said in the interview with Hoda, she doesn't want them to steal her joy. Because again, as I've said before, if this whole thing was to get revenge on Savannah Guthrie or to punish her in some way, what better way to get back at them by not letting that happen, right? By going back to work, not letting them rob your joy, etc. That doesn't mean you're not going to grieve your mother, of course. Of course you are. But I think she's doing a good thing, Savannah. And she's doing probably what her mother would want her to do.
Next time he's saying, hey, Sarge, you know what? Life goes on, right? And things just happen like this. But yes, I think the best thing for her in her own, for her own mental health and overall health is to try to get back to some sort of routine where she goes back to work and does something that she loves to try to keep her mind off of this, because I'm sure she's basically losing her mind in so many aspects about what's going on with the investigation, worried about her mom and her health and everything else that goes along with it. We can only imagine what somebody would go through that kind of trauma.
What do you think about the timing, though, of this note to TMZ on the day that she went back? Do you think that there could be a link there?
I don't think so, but like everything else, if this is somebody who's just been trying to make, trouble, so to speak, then yes, sure, they would do this, take this opportunity because she's back on the news and everything else that goes along with it. But I don't know. I just hope that they figure out who this person is, and if they have real information. I mean, there's over $1 million in reward for this. So, I mean, come on.
I think it's good for Savannah also to be like staying active and doing things. Like, what are you supposed to do? Just like torture yourself every day? Just dwelling on it all day, every day? And like the woman the other day said, unless you have an idea of where you should be searching is like useless, is what she had said. You need to have at least a condensed area of where to even look, or you're just spinning your wheels. So I get it. I get exactly why she's doing what she's doing. Also, please remember to like the video. Likes are for my spirit animal, Shadow the Night Owl here, if you were wondering who that is. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And again, Super Chat's a great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Becoming a channel member or gifting memberships gives you access to the members-only live streams. Super Stickers also help a bunch too. And make sure you say hello to the flock of black sheep. We got representatives from all over the world here, literally.
You don't seem that, just as the tone of your voice, you don't seem that convinced with these notes.
No, I didn't. Like I said, I wasn't really a big fan of this ransom stuff from the beginning. And one person they did catch, right, that was trying to scam the people out of this, it would have rewritten textbooks, Brian, on how law enforcement handles ransom notes. I mean, they didn't go directly to the family. They go through the media, which is something we've never seen before. There's just some other, things I just don't like about this, right? The idea is to get the money and be able to give the person back. But that doesn't seem to be part of the equation when this thing first happened.
And there was no proof of life ever, from what we know.
Right. And you're not going to send any money over the internet for this. I mean, it's not that it's gone forever. I know a lot of people don't think that the Bitcoin can't be trace. But listen, there are a lot of people out there that have the skills to be able to do this. And you know what? The FBI, I'm sure, is working on that as we speak.
Yeah, I sort of thought all the ransom notes were just made up. But then when Savannah did that interview with Hoda, she said that she believes that two of the ones that they received could be legit. So then I started to think to myself, well, wait a minute, if she's saying that, that's probably the FBI telling her that. So maybe some of them have been, real.
Well, I mean, listen, they don't tell, the FBI is not going to tell the victim's family exactly everything that's going on. They might just say, like, this is what we got. We think it's credible. But law enforcement's job is to make sure they vet out all that information anyway. They're not going to come out and say this is nonsense and we're not going to even be bothered with it. So, you don't want to give people hope, but you also want to say, listen, we're taking this seriously. We don't know if it's real or not. And we're going to try to track it down and see if we can get you an answer. I mean, I'm sure that was kind of like the conversation that was going on.
Yeah. And so we'll see where these notes go. I mean, again, I just wonder if TMZ thinks it's a good headline every time they get a note. But obviously they're saying that they're forwarding it to the FBI, and we'll just have to see how that plays out. I'm curious, Joe, it's now been more than 2 months. You did so much cold case work, and I don't want to call this a cold case yet, but if you were working this case, you received the file now, like, where do you begin?
It's easy for me, Brian. I would just say I would be creating an international cold case task force. And we would be bringing in every agency that's within 100 miles of where this crime happened. And I'm talking about at least one representative. And of course, we would include the federal partners, including the DEA. Now, people say, well, how do you know? Why would the DEA? Because Mexico is not that far away. And I'm sure the DEA has assets and confidential informants in Mexico that they can help out with this investigation. And one of the things that I would be pushing for is to be debriefing every prisoner that gets arrested within that 100-mile radius, asking them if they know anything about the case. Asking recently convicted prisoners as they're sitting in the cell for the first time in the first week, you know what? Maybe they do know something. Listen, you have to go to the sources where these guys hang out and these guys know one another, so to speak, and try to get information out of somebody. This is a get out of jail free card. And like I said before, over $1 million and you haven't had a real tip that led you anywhere is really concerning, which means it could be a big part of the dark underworld that we don't know about just yet, and people have been keeping it quiet. But you know what? One thing I found in my career is that somebody who's been sitting in a cell says, you know what? I know something. I got to get out of here, and they can try to make a deal.
It's interesting.
And by the way, announcement, tomorrow I'll be interviewing Christian John again. So those of you who remember him, he joined me with Dr. Salerno once, and I spoke to him individually twice. I'll be talking to him again tomorrow. I think we're going to talk about narcissistic parents and how they distort who you are. They reflect back to you a distorted mirror of who you are. And that's going to be part of what we talk about.
You say that one of my cop friends, and he's not even a detective, he's a street cop and he's a younger guy. He was asked, we were chatting about the Nancy Guthrie case, and that's what he said. He said, I bet at some point someone in prison is going to have the tip. And I was like, why do you think that? And he said, I don't know. I just have a hunch. Like at some point it's going to be someone behind bars who gives up some info.
Well, I mean, it's a tactic that we use quite often when we're trying to investigate cold cases, when you're dealing with things with 20, 30 years old. Who else would know about things such as this? And listen, debriefing of prisoners, even at intake, and I don't care if it's for something minor. You never know exactly how many times people have been arrested, and they might be looking at some serious time and they have heard something. I'll take a rumor. I'll take anything. Of course, the police have to go and vet that information.
And that's an interesting point. Someone heard something in jail. The people that have less to lose, right? They're like, I heard this. And maybe they can hear something through the grapevine. So if anyone knows about this, criminals would. That's what I would guess. They probably have a closer ear to the ground in the criminal world than most people, even in prison. So that would be an interesting avenue to explore, in my opinion.
But it's a lead, right? There comes a point you have to go and shake the trees and create your own leads. I don't want to see police departments sit back and say, well, we have DNA possibly, right? Well, no, you have nothing until you get it back. That's the first thing. And even if you get it back, you don't know if it's going to be usable, if they were able to extract the mixtures, all those things that go, right? Get off your butts, go out there and start shaking your own trees. Make something happen. And listen, law enforcement has the capability of doing this, but having all of those other departments doing the same thing you're doing, you shake enough trees, it could be something falling out of it.
You mentioned Mexico. I've always wondered why it seems like they've downplayed Mexico. Like in the beginning, they made a point to say, well, we have no evidence to believe this has anything to do with Mexico. The Mexican government said the same thing. But it's so close. I mean, I drove there from Nancy's house. It takes like an hour and a half, maybe even less time if there's no traffic. Like, I just have a hard time just saying it has nothing to do with Mexico. I don't know. It seems like we should keep that possibility open.
You always
My whole thought would have been, if I did this, I'd probably the first place I would go is Mexico, because I just think it's easier to get away with things there. People, less eyeballs on you, less people who know who Nancy is. So that's where I'd be going. I mean, think about that, chat. If that were you, I'm not saying whatever would be you, but if you're a criminal and you want to get away with something with a person, where are you going to go? You're probably not staying in America. You'll probably go south. Just easier to stay away, right?
keep it open. But I also remember, whatever the law enforcement agencies say too, you never take them for full value. They say everything and nothing all in the same sentence, right? Oh, everybody's cleared. You know, nobody's cleared until the case is over. I mean, it's as simple as that. First of all, you don't want to keep people, you want to keep people calm. You want to keep people, in a situation where they might make a mistake. So we never want to label anything as, this person, that person, or anything else. But yes, you have to keep the Mexico angle open. Not even saying that there, drug cartels are involved. It's just an easy escape over the border kind of thing, which in this case might even help even more in respect that it's an automatic federal takeover at that point, as soon as you have that international line cross or a state line cross. And quite frankly, something I was hoping for, where the feds would be able to just step in and say, okay, our turn. The feds are always lurking in these cases. I mean, I've worked with the feds, and it's not like television where you're always fighting. It's actually really a symbiotic relationship, and I've always had some good relationships with those guys and girls. But you know what? We hear differently. We don't know for sure what's happened in Pima, but if that's the case, it would be an absolute shame if that occurred.
Tammy, the new news is TMZ got a new ransom note asking for half a Bitcoin, and they would tell people where Nancy's body is. I don't think it's real. They also said they had seen Nancy alive in Mexico at a point. I don't really agree with that either. I don't think that's true either.
Yeah, so what I heard from sources is initially that there was an issue between the FBI and the local sheriff's office, that the sheriff's office wasn't sharing it.
And also, the people that want to go search for her, it's like, what would you even do? Like, it sounds good to say it, but what would you actually do? Like, how would you spend your time? Would you ask the Cajun Navy to hunt? Like, would you go out in the desert yourself? Like, seriously, what would you do? Talk to people? Like, I don't even know what you would do. Like, the people who are equipped to handle it are the detectives, people that the FBI, the people that know what to do with themselves.
Everything that the sheriff has this longstanding beef with the FBI, and there were issues in the beginning, but now they have this task force, and apparently it's pretty seamless now. They're getting along. It's less about the sheriff and more just like the detectives and the FBI agents working together, and they've sort of straightened all of that out, from what I'm hearing.
Well, let's hope so, right? I mean, but even then, you've lost valuable time in those weeks where you're trying to iron this out. And did it get ironed out because it finally became public and became part of the discourse of what was going on in the investigation? Because if that's the case,
they didn't give up on Elizabeth Smart because she got returned. They looked like she got found by someone else. But so if Savannah looks for her every day, the criminals have won. They've robbed her of her life. And every day she'll be searching for her mother instead of doing the things that gives her joy in living her life anyway. That's given them a win, in my opinion.
Okay, great, you fixed it, but it's still like you got to shake your head and say, well, what were you thinking? I mean, there's so many things that I look at this case and I just scratch my head, and I always make the joke that I said, if I had hair, I'd pull it out, because things such as not even holding the crime scene. I mean, there was no reason to let that crime scene go. I'll tell you right now, if that case happened in New York City, not only we would have kept the house, we would have cordoned off that entire piece of property, and we would have parked one of those big old temporary headquarters vehicle right on the front lawn. And I mean, we're talking, I haven't seen a line or a grid search or a zone search. I haven't seen any of that. I mean, you have people walking around like, on an Easter egg hunt. That's not the way you do these things. David dogs, why aren't we bringing them in? why have they never brought back bloodhounds? They said that they did it in the beginning.
There's also a huge difference between looking for a 15 or 16-year-old girl that's probably still alive and was still alive versus an 84-year-old woman who is almost certainly dead. Let's keep it real here.
They said canines. They didn't specify the kind of dogs that they brought in. I don't know for sure. I'm sure if you heard the type of dogs. But at this point, bring back bloodhounds. Let them sniff the clothing, the pajamas, whatever was left over, and see if we can get a trail, anything. But now we're talking months into this, and I just say this is like basic investigation stuff. And why wasn't it done? I don't think we'll ever get the answer for.
I still don't understand why they cleared the crime scene that first time, because the family, it wasn't itching to get back into the house. I don't know what the urgency was in doing that. There didn't seem to be any pressure from the outside. I couldn't figure it out.
From all we know, that there was nobody else that even had an expectation of privacy for that house, meaning the only person that had access to the house or the privacy was Nancy herself, which means we wouldn't need, we meaning law enforcement, not me personally, wouldn't need even a search warrant at that point. So, to say that you would just do this and then leave and then let everybody kind of walk all over the place, it's kind of like, I question that. Say that entire place should have been done. Because remember, we saw the guy come into the, I think it was the septic tank, right? And kind of like poking in a few days. You found the blood, on the doorstep, right? The gloves. Talk about another nightmare scenario, right? Having 16 pairs of rubber gloves that they were left at the scene by searchers, and then another pair of rubber gloves from 2 miles away. It's like, what are we doing here, folks? This is not the stuff that we train. And there are no national standards per se on how to run a crime scene, but there is plenty of literature on this. The National Institute of Justice has guides out on this stuff. There have been plenty of textbooks written on this. So to me, it's unacceptable in 2026.
When I think you saw my story, we had a source close to the investigation in Silhouette talking, and I think you tweeted about it, where he was saying that the supervisor had never investigated a homicide, which I think I remember seeing.
Tim, thank you for becoming a member. Member for 1 month. Appreciate that. You have access now to the members only live streams. And to Tech and Kat, I just don't think it's realistic for everyone to do that.
Your tweet, that didn't seem to bother. Weren't you trying to say, well, that part didn't bother you that much?
Right. It doesn't bother me that, because the supervisor's there to make sure that the detectives have what they need in order to investigate the case. So when I was a sergeant in the detective squad, I remember the lieutenant telling me, when I was brand new sergeant in the squad, I remember the lieutenant says, give the detectives enough space. Your job is to make sure that they have the equipment and the necessary means to do their job, and just let detectives do their work. So yes, when you saw that, I said, that doesn't matter, right? The idea behind the supervisor in this is going to be the manager, the mentor, the trainer, to be able to go in there and say, okay, guys, have you thought of this? No? Okay, why don't we give that a shot? That's really what the supervisor's job should be. But we're hearing all kinds of stuff about what's going on, like benching your homicide detectives or the people who had the skill sets already. But you know what, Brian? I don't know if you've asked this question, why didn't they ask for a mutual aid from Tucson or Phoenix, right? And initially, I'd be calling Phoenix and Tucson and say, hey, I need 5 homicide detectives or 5 detectives with experience. I need them there within 48 hours. We're going to pay the bill, but, send them down here. We need everybody at bear on this, because it's been proven. The more detectives on an initial case, the faster you'll get it solved. It's as simple as that. And having all these people involved and all this experience to do so is something that needed to be brought bare to the initial stages of this investigation.
Yeah, and beyond the supervisor, we're hearing that the detectives also had less than 2 years experience, because the experienced detectives were moved out of homicide because of a beef with the sheriff.
And again, though, does that mean they had no missing persons experience, or was it just homicide experience? We didn't get to the bottom of that question, did we?
And all this drama with the election, and it gets very political.
Oh yeah.
And I realized that pretty much right when I got there and started talking to people.
Ellen, thank you very much for the super sticker, Ellen. Shadow, the Night Owl, says thank you. That'll help him pay for some Hootie snacks. So thank you very much.
Well, there's just these beefs with the sheriff that have been ongoing for a long time and seem to have bled into this investigation.
And the silence is sort of deafening too, in regards to like what people know from the outside, if they were even asked, or they were even what they even feel about the situation. But yes, listen, detectives who never caught a homicide or an investigation like this, the only way they're going to learn is until they do so. The idea is having that experience to help them move them along, right? Let them do the case. We saw something very similar happen in Moscow, if you remember, right? The detective there, he never really did the homicide, and they made an arrest in that case too. So if you've investigated cases before, we train our detectives in New York City to solve homicides, because you will then use all those tools to solve your lesser crimes. So we prepared our detectives to solve the ultimate crime against society, so that anything less than that, they already had the tools necessary, which would bring in another conversation. What is their training like? Who does the training? How often is the training? And was anybody trained? Those are the next questions that would come up. I mean, I would like to see if they have a detective guide or a procedure about how to handle a crime scene, even from the uniform cops, the first cops on the scene. Listen, they often make or break cases. Do they hold the scene? Did they see any witnesses? Did they detain anybody? Did they notice something out of place? Those are all real important steps when you're dealing with a case like this.
Yeah, and I was in Idaho for the Moscow.
I mean, generally, the people that really tout about how much empathy they have, often to be covert narcissistic people, are the ones that say they have so much empathy all the time. Seriously.
Murders too. And I think the difference there was the police weren't saying anything, and we didn't know what was going on behind the scenes, but we just didn't know. I mean, we didn't know if they were busy, if they had a lot, if they didn't have a lot. With this situation, though, in Arizona with Nancy Guthrie, like, we actually have sources telling us that they have nothing, that they have no suspect, that they don't have any good leads right now, that they're basically just, I mean, like, the latest I've heard is that they're going to all the construction sites in the neighborhood and trying to get a full list of everybody who's worked these construction jobs, just to go down that list and try to rule those people out. And apparently they're having a hard time because some of the crews are nervous to give up names. And, like, some people are in the country illegally. There's, issues there with all of that. But I mean, they're not to say that they're desperate, but they're, I mean, kind of like you said, shaking the trees. Like, it seems like they're really shaking the trees. Where when I was in Idaho, they actually had like really legitimate stuff going on behind the scenes. They just weren't, they were closing in on Brian Koberger. They just weren't telling us that. Whereas they're not closing in on anyone from what we know in Arizona.
Right. And I kind of agree with that, so to speak, because you see these over $1 million worth of rewards, and we haven't seen anything that resembles anything of reports, except for, remember in the initial stages, and you were part of one of those where they had somebody in custody, and they made the cardinal rule of saying, we have somebody in custody, right? You don't do that until after you vet out the information and who this person is, because it looks bad. I mean, I just wish that the sheriff, and I've seen this a number of times recently, would have just used a public information officer at the very beginning stages of this. When you have a major case like this, I want to see my police executive at the scene. I want him or her directing what should be going on, what assets they need, if they need cell phones or batteries or even just food to keep them at the scene going. That's what I want my executives to be doing, not sitting in front of the press conference. That's why you have a PIO, because as you know, Brian, these cases are dynamic and they change in the matter of minutes. And when you the executive say something, everyone expects that to be the truth, even though you're not lying, but you gave out bad information. Who can walk back the executive? There's nobody above you. That's why you have the PIO, and then the next person who's higher than them can step in and say, okay, we know we said this, but that was the initial thing. Now the investigation has shifted. This is what we found. We will keep you posted. And that's it. And instead, it turned into the mess that it has been.
That's such a good point. The sheriff could have almost protected himself and his reputation. You use a PIO, and then it's kind of like, oh, we had bad information. It's more on them, versus now you got the top guy making mistakes, saying things different ways. And then it like it is now, it's like, who can we trust?
Right. And now every time he says something or every time he did something, nobody believes him. And that's part of the problem. But that's why we have PIOs. Listen, this whole incident management system technique has been in place since September 11th, where we have an incident commander and we have different sections. And one of those sections is public information. And that person is generally the public information officer. And I can't remember the case offhand. Well, it was a much smaller department, and it was a major case. And they actually got a PIO from a major city that wasn't too far away. And he stepped in, the sergeant stepped in and controlled the entire narrative, and everything worked out well. we spend the time and effort to train our PIOs to deal with the media, to be able to speak in front of the media and do all those things. As you know, it's not easy. So if we have somebody that's trained for somebody who, in this case, a police executive who really doesn't have that kind of training, who might think that they have that training, stand up there and say things that end up not being true, I think it turned off a lot of people. And of course, we see now a lot of negative attention directed his way, and unfortunately is rightly so.
Well, you brought up Idaho earlier, and they did something like that. They brought in the Idaho State Police public information officer to handle things for them in Moscow, even though it was a city case, city of Moscow. You know, they had someone from the outside come in and just handle all the media requests. And the chief maybe did like 1 or 2 interviews total. I mean, and it was very rare. And he just let that PIO handle everything.
And that's the way it should be done, right? So we have the model, we have the training, right? FEMA runs this. We know exactly what we want them to do and say and be able to handle something during a big major case so that we don't run into these kind of problems. But we saw this up in the Brown University incident. We saw this with the shooting at Charlie Kirk. People coming out who shouldn't be saying things in the media, and it just doesn't foretell well about what's exactly the investigation is going to reveal. Plus, you bring in chances for the defense attorney to be able to do things, because remember, the defense attorney, if he's going to say, well, my client wasn't the guy because we're excluding all others. You had all these other people under arrest. What happened to them? Why weren't they the ones? I'm sure, you're just opening yourself up to this kind of stuff. And it's just, you have to prepare from the very minute this case starts that you're going to trial, and you dot your I's and cross your T's, and that's the way it should be handled.
I know there's still a lot of holes, but I haven't talked to you about this case yet, so I'm just curious. Do you have a theory? I mean, do you have a working theory based on the information that we do have of what happened here, what the motive might have been?
Well, there's a lot of things that a lot of people have speculated on a lot of things. But one thing that I can think of is that I don't believe she was a targeted attack. I think there was going to be a planned burglary and that this went bad. Why do I say it's not a targeted attack? Well, listen, look how they like the guy dealt with the camera, right? I mean, putting flowers on it, whatever. He wasn't really in a big rush. He wasn't really too concerned about this. And I had said from the very beginning that this guy was.
So my cousin is a narcissist who I have cut off. And so everything he does is tries to smear me in front of everyone. My own family tries to do that.
Was an amateur. And the reason why I said that is because he did not look prepared. Now, the people will throw that back at me and say, well, Joe, he's not an amateur, but we're 2 months into this. Well, listen, these guys make mistakes. It's up to law enforcement to be able to figure out what those mistakes are. But, listen, most burglaries happen directly through the front door. So that was his first intention. Does it happen through the back door? Apparently that's where things go. But you have an 84-year-old immobile person who has a heart monitor and all the other things that go along with it. Bad choice if she was a targeted attack, because the likelihood of something going wrong with her is extremely high. And now you're looking at murder charges. So
but if it's just a burglary gone wrong, though, why would he have been there previously? Remember, we think he was there January 11th, which would have been 3 weeks before. Would he have been planning
staking out the joint, right? He's actually doing his homework. He's looking at things. Maybe he's knowing that her routine is like she goes over to her, she leaves every Sunday to go to, wherever. So, it was that day of Sunday. I mean, was it on a weekend so was he doing his homework, so to speak? That's just the way I would be looking as the working theory. And I had said before we started, once the ransom notes started kicking in, you have another level of investigation that has to be done there. So you have to be able to pivot. So you have, like I said, 3 investigations happening: ransom, stranger abduction, and always friends and family are always included in these investigations. I don't care what anybody says. Most people are victimized by someone they know, and that's a direction that cases often go through. That doesn't mean it's true, but you as the investigator have to exclude all others. That's the goal. So if I can exclude the family, great, move on to the next one. Let's go through this. But that's why I was, I'm pushing this debriefing of prison stuff, because this isn't the first time I don't think this guy would do a burglary or do something like this. Show that photo to your prisoners. show the video, because he had a little bit of a funky walk, right? He had that knapsack on that might have been a little too heavy. Looked like he almost, would lose his balance. Maybe somebody identifies the gait, right? I mean, anything. You're never going to know until you try. And that's the bottom line here.
One of my friends, a retired FBI agent, Maureen O'Connell, who I have on a lot, you mentioned the gait and looked kind of funky. She thinks he was high. Like, she's just convinced that the guy was like on drugs.
He might be. I mean, listen, you have an elderly person, but probably information out there is who she actually was. So, guys like this who may be using drugs or whatever, think there's drugs in the house, there's cash money, right? Because elderly people senior citizens tend to have cash in the house, right? So, I mean, it becomes a target-rich environment as far as I'm concerned. Listen, I don't have any background on this information. That would just be our working theory. And listen, this happens in every investigation. The detectives get together, and you sit there and you talk, all right, what do we think of the scenarios? And then you lay out all the scenarios, and then you see what evidence leads you to that. One of the things, maybe you have the answer to this one, Brian, I've been asking.
I can address my cousin if you would all like to hear about it. He's someone that a lot of my content ideas have come from him, because they are things that he has done to me years ago. And so I've cut him off. And he's someone I've been no contact with for about 5 years now, but he doesn't like it. And so every once in a while, he'll reach out to my Instagram or try to reach around my no contact. He'll be friendly when I have to see him, like at my grandmother's birthday, but then he'll try to get me to unblock him. And if I don't, then he just tries to smear me. He'll say, oh, you abuse your grandmother, or you're with your grandmother and you haven't given her rent. Meanwhile, I do everything here and I help her, but he tries to make everything seem like it's the worst possible thing. And so apparently he reaches out to other people like Kat as well. And it's just one of those things where I've had to learn, okay, it's just what I have to deal with. And I've never wanted to get sucked into the game, but see clearly some of them are absolutely relentless. And my cousin has beaten his ex-girlfriends, by the way, multiple of them. That's the biggest reason we went no contact, as I mentioned that to him. Like, oh, did you know your ex reached out to me and told me you beat her? And I said that to him, and he didn't like it one bit. So I was like, you know what? Go fuck yourself. You're dead to me. So it's just disappointing that that's what he still does. I've tried to avoid him for a long time. So, but like I said, when they can't control you, they'll try to control how others see you. So, and all I was saying to Kat was, there are a lot of covert narcissist people that go on and on about how much love and light they have and how empathetic they are, when in reality, it's a ruse. I'm not saying Kat is that.
All along, and no one's ever given me an answer. Was there a router in the house? Did they take the router? So why is that important? Well, if you have friends and family and acquaintances and the pool guy and all the other stuff, they connect to the Wi-Fi. And that Wi-Fi that router becomes a real record of who was there. And even if you don't have access to it, right, you happens to you go somewhere and it says, hey, there's a Wi-Fi here. It connects onto your MAC address or whatever it is on your phone or your watch, and people are going to turn around and say, well, he made her take off the wristwatch, the Apple Watch and the phone. Yes, because the word is out there that these things can be easily traced and trackable. So bad guys know to get rid of these things now. It's unfortunate, but it's just a sign of the times.
You think we'll get a resolution soon?
No. If you would ask me this question in the first week or two, I would say yes, because I was really hopeful when I saw the FBI coming in here and doing this, because it is it's not a mini department. People think like this is like some mom and pop sheriff's department. They have like 500 deputies in this department, and as far as the 18,000 agencies goes, it's huge, because most departments have fewer than 20 sworn cops. So this is a big department, but the FBI brings so many assets to bear. And, quite frankly, I wouldn't have mind seeing even the Secret Service coming in because of their cell phone data and technology and all the other things. Like I said, the DEA, because of the drug connections that they have in Mexico. So I would look to further my federal all partners in this thing, and just throw it out there and say, maybe somebody didn't think of it. I don't know. I mean, and I'm not saying I had the answers to everything and I'm the greatest and all that other stuff. I'm just saying this is what I would be. This is how my brain thinks. Even 14 years into retirement, when I first started this, I said I'd be doing this, this, and this as of right this second.
Yeah, and you make a good point. People do think it's like some small little country department. There's 400 deputies.
Yeah, a couple of hundred. Yeah,
yeah. It's not a small department. And Tucson isn't like some small place. You know, it's a city. With the ransom notes, what are you looking for, you know, as an investigator to see if they're legit?
Well, it would be that direct connection to the family. They want the money.
But as you see, issues keep on coming up. It's not just as simple as going no contact and then they respect your boundaries. It's like Christian John says, it becomes a challenge to them to cross your boundaries, to break them, to get you back under their control again. Because when I was younger, I didn't have as much confidence as I have now. So like I was picked on and I just didn't stand up for myself. And it wasn't until I started standing up for myself that things become a problem. But again, this is what happens. You stand up for yourself, they'll twist and distort everything you can do, try to make you look bad. And again, I've never had someone treat me worse than a member of my own family, which is disappointing. And again, it's not always that easy just to go no contact, because unless you stay away from every family gathering, you're going to have to see them occasionally. It just is what it is. So you have to make some tough choices. And again, you've probably heard me talk about this, right? Where do you think I got this from? It's because I live it.
They don't usually, I don't think they've ever wanted a big production out of this. It's usually very quiet, one-on-one kind of conversation between them, the law enforcement agency, and or the family members to get the money, to come up with a scenario where they're going to drop off the victim and get and be gone with it. So to bring in all of the national media and all the other stuff is just way too much for me as far as I'm concerned. Because if you're trying to keep something like this, you want to keep it on the down low. You don't want to have the FBI getting involved in this thing off the bat. You don't want that if you're a bad guy. No way, no how.
All right. I appreciate Joe for taking the time to talk with me, help me go over all these new developments. There's a couple of other things I wanted to tell you about that's developed over the last couple of days, specifically when it comes to Sheriff Nanos. You guys remember the Board of Supervisors in Pima County has been investigating the sheriff. There was this whole controversy with him allegedly lying under oath and saying that he had never been suspended before, when actually at his last job decades ago in El Paso, he had been suspended a number of times. So the Board of Supervisors hired this legal team to look into the sheriff. There's also been allegations of ethical violations involving his opponent when he was running for sheriff.
Tina, thank you for the super chat here. I love this channel. Why is it difficult for some people to allow you to be happy? You are for them, but they always find ways to bring you down. It's really just about control. It's not because they care about me in any way. It's just that they're not feeling like they're in the one-up position. That's really all it is. And how do you know it's that? Because he used to do the same things to me all the time. He would cut me off, and that was fine. But now that I did it to him, it's the end of the world. That's just how it goes. You live and you learn.
A woman named Heather Lappin, who also worked at the sheriff's office, and these allegations are that he was purposely punishing her ahead of the election and that there was election interference. So there's this new document that's come out where there are 3 different things that he was being investigated for bullying. It said that they don't have the evidence to support a finding. But then these 2, they backed up. Ethics, the preponderance of the evidence supports a finding that Sheriff Nanos used his...
And to repeat, all I was saying about the empathy thing is this. There's a lot of covert narc type folks that go on and on about their empathy, and it's really not that. It's performative at best. I'm not saying that was Kat, but there are a lot of people out there that do that.
Authority and department resources for political gain. The evidence includes considering Lieutenant Lappin's political campaign in investigation and disciplinary decision-making, culminating in issuing a press release that included information obtained in his capacity of sheriff. So they backed up an ethical violation, basically saying that he put out this press release before the election against a woman who he was running against, who was also under him at the sheriff's office. And then also code of conduct, the preponderance of the evidence supports a finding that Sheriff Nanos violated applicable code of conduct rules by including confidential information in a press release about the reasons he placed Lieutenant Lappin on paid administrative leave for political gain. He did not maintain rules about courtesy and civility. So they upheld that one, and it says the sheriff's actions were found to be inconsistent with the listed policies. However, the sheriff is not subject to these policies as an elected official. So again, it just goes back to the fact that because he is an elected sheriff, they can issue these rulings, but there's really not much they can do in terms of getting him out of office because he is elected by the people. There, of course, is the recall going on behind the scenes, which I've told you guys about, where they're trying to collect enough signatures to try to have another election to get him out. So he's obviously been under fire from all different sides. There's also this new report that came out from Fox Digital over the weekend that he tried to bring a loaded gun on a plane and was going through TSA. I had that here. Accused of bringing a loaded gun to an airport security checkpoint. It was apparently in his carry-on bag. The sheriff wasn't charged, but he was required to secure the gun before continuing his travel. Just makes you wonder if it had been anybody else, would they have been charged or fined or something like that? But because he was the sheriff, maybe they just sort of let him go. But again, a loaded gun trying to get on a plane, that was kind of a shocking report. So those are the latest headlines from today. I got a couple of other things I'm working on this week that I'll keep you guys posted on. Again, I really appreciate everybody for all your support, for checking out the channel. Again, day 65 since Nancy Guthrie just vanished out of her home in Tucson, Arizona. So I hope that, and I still believe that answers will come. I just hope it's sooner than later. And my heart again goes out to the Guthrie family. And I just think of how difficult it must have been for Savannah Guthrie to go back to work with everything going on. So I'll keep you guys posted if there are any developments, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Hey everybody, I'm Ashley Banfield. This is Drop Dead Serious. I have some really big news to share with you about the Nancy Guthrie case. We're on day 65, and I know I already dropped an episode earlier because Savannah
And yeah, so usually how it goes is he would reach out to some of my stuff, and rather than reply or justify, argue, defend, or explain, I would just block him. But clearly, it's not good enough to do that. And really, what is really the problem? That I'm doing better on YouTube now. And so he wants to tear me down. So what can I do? All I can do is ignore and try to do the best I can in my own life. And I'm glad Kat let me know he's also doing that, because she didn't tell me he was doing that until right now.
Turned to the Today Show this morning, but I've learned something from TMZ that I did not know before. And it all comes amid sort of a whole tumble of information about new ransom-like letters that have come into TMZ. So let's be really clear, because it's getting confusing about all of the different letters. But the headline here is that the original letters that came to TMZ and local TV stations in Tucson, there were 2 letters. They threatened to kill Nancy Guthrie. We had not heard that until now. We always knew that there was a consequence threatened if you don't pay by Thursday. Then by Monday, there's a second deadline, and the consequence is that the money goes up, I think, to $6 million. But we never heard that the other consequence was that they threatened to kill Nancy Guthrie. And then, of course, after those 2 letters, they went silent. And we never heard anything afterwards, and they didn't give a mode of communication to the FBI, to the police, to TMZ, to KVOA in Tucson, to KGUN in Tucson. And incidentally, KGUN, also called KGUN, they received a second letter from these same people. And it's known that they're the same people because they had the same Bitcoin address. So the first letter went to KGUN, KVOA, and TMZ. And the second letter just went to KGUN. Don't know why, but it did. But they had the same Bitcoin address. So they're from the same alleged ransom seekers. And that's the one that Savannah refers to in her interview with Hoda Kotb when she says, we received the two that we received, we tend to believe are real. And TMZ has also told me that the FBI, with whom they've been working, hand in glove, because they're receiving the communications and they're turning them all over to the FBI indicated to TMZ that the FBI also believes that those two ransom letters are from the kidnappers, the real kidnappers. So let's talk a little bit more about what other notes came in, because it started to get confusing. Then there were text messages that went to Annie and Tommaso. Annie is Savannah's sister. Tommaso, named Tommy, is her husband. There were text messages that went to those two, and there were two separate messages. And an FBI's, or I should say a federal affidavit, lists out a man in California who was arrested. Derek Colea is his name. They say he was scamming. They arrested him for scamming. To my knowledge, they don't believe he's involved in this. He hasn't been charged with kidnapping or anything related to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, just the attempt to extort money. So he's facing those federal charges in the near future. He's made his appearance. I believe either he was extradited or he brought himself to Arizona to make a court appearance in the initial offings of that case. But that's a different set of letters. And then come the third set of letters. And these are the letters from somebody who has reached out repeatedly, a half dozen times, to TMZ to say, I'm not the kidnapper, but I know who they are, using the words they every time there's a reference, whether it's they in the singular, as some people use, or they in the plural, we don't know. But I know who they are. And for one Bitcoin, I'm willing to turn that information and, quote, hand them over on a silver platter. Those emails went into TMZ early on as well. Okay. Many thought that they were phony. Not necessarily TMZ, though. The information started with time is of the essence. And then suddenly, just within a day, I think, time is no longer of the essence. And that's important to Harvey Levin, because he said, if this guy isn't real, why would he downgrade the importance of his information, or the fact that he could deliver either alive or dead Nancy Guthrie? Either one, there's value there. Why would he diminish that himself if he didn't know for sure? That's the gut feeling of Harvey. And you're going to hear from Harvey Levin in just a moment, and he's going to tell you everything about what they went through at TMZ today. But I do want to read for you. So I didn't make Harvey read on camera. I'm going to read for you their communications. And so first off, Harvey and Charles Ladabaudiere, they went live on TMZ to say they've received another communication today from the guy who says he has the information, he knows who those kidnappers are, and he wants to turn them in, but he wants a Bitcoin. Wants half a Bitcoin now, half a Bitcoin upon the arrest. And they said the news that sort of was made with this initial overture in an email to TMZ today was that Nancy's dead. That this person said, Nancy is not alive. She is dead. That's what TMZ says. But he's still willing to turn these people in. And so Harvey Levin and Charles Ladabaudiere did their TMZ lives telling the news that they had received this email communication from this same person who they've received each time, because it's the same Bitcoin address each time. So the half dozen communications about, I know who the kidnappers are and I'm willing to turn them in, is always from the same person with the same Bitcoin account. But after they did their live broadcast, they got another email from him, her, whoever. They got another email after their live address. And this one is more specific. They said, in the second letter, quote, I saw her alive with them in the state of Sonora, Mexico. Interesting. I saw her alive with them in the state of Sonora, Mexico. Okay. And then this is where the sender starts to get angry. They're frustrated that the FBI isn't taking them seriously, and said this, quote, it is unbelievable that millions have been wasted, and yet here I am waiting to deliver them on a silver platter since the 11th of February for a Bitcoin, but I am disregarded as a scam. They are free to send They are free and the case is frozen, but the egos remain hot when it comes to me. Arrogance at its finest, end quote. And then you should note that the price of Bitcoin has been dropping, and so now it's a lot less. A half a Bitcoin's about $35,000. And TMZ made this deal saying, look,
the only reasonable explanation for that is maybe harder to track Bitcoin than actually getting the reward from Savannah. But even so, Bitcoin can be tracked too. But like I said before, you want to dispute it. You want to like divert it into many places first if you didn't want to get caught.
We could get the ransom money for you, right? You tell us the information, we tell the FBI. Therefore, there's a record that you're part of it because the guy didn't believe he was going to get the ransom money, but we still can't figure out why he wouldn't go for the $1.2 million instead of the, half a Bitcoin's 35,000. Maybe if you get the full Bitcoin upon the arrest, it's only like 70,000 compared to 1.2 million in ransom money. So this isn't rather in reward money. So this isn't making a whole lot of sense. But you'll hear why Harvey is unable to impart that wisdom on this letter sender. They also are distancing themselves from Nancy's kidnapping, saying they're not the ones to do it. They said that they've been out of the country for more than 5 years and had nothing to do with the horrific crime, just that they know who it was who did it. And in the second note, they said they're not motivated by greed. This is what they said. The motivation was, quote, I just want what's fair and to live peacefully with enough to start my life again quietly without having to join a witness protection program. Again, I don't know what 70,000 is going to get you in terms of trying to live your life out peacefully if you're afraid of these kidnappers, right? Because 1.2 million would be a lot better. It would be a lot more money to buy yourself some safety if that's the concern. A couple of other things that I want to let you know is that TMZ, I mentioned they've been working hand in hand with the FBI by giving them all of the communications that they receive. But it has been a two-way street. And Harvey Levin is going to tell you in just a moment what the FBI has been doing with TMZ because they have been busy working with TMZ. I know that there are a lot of people out there who say, what's TMZ got to do with anything? A lot. Because that's where the communications are coming in. And so the FBI is taking it very seriously, and they are doing a lot with TMZ. That's coming in just a moment. But first, I want you to hear from Harvey Levin. He was super busy today, but he stepped aside to do a quick interview with me. First, a quick note from my sponsor. Let's face it, I cover some pretty dark stuff, right? Some of the darkest stuff out from these alleged ransom seekers.
Well, this is somebody we've gotten more than.
Annie, thank you very much for the super sticker. I appreciate you and your support. Super stickers, great way to support the channel. Same with super chats and becoming a channel member. Also, make sure you like the video while you're here too.
A half dozen emails from this person. This is somebody who says they know who the kidnappers are, plural, and where Nancy Guthrie is. We haven't heard from this person in almost a month, but today we got 2 notes from him. And, he is persisting. Now he wants half a Bitcoin and he will divulge the location. Now, he says that she is in Sonoma. Let me just
Sonora.
check. Sonora,
Yeah.
Mexico, and says she is dead, but says that he can lead them to the kidnapper. And so, he said this before, but, he is kind of repeating what he told us early on, which is she was no longer alive as of the Wednesday after she was kidnapped.
And the interesting thing is you have turned all of these communications over to the FBI.
Yep.
They won't tell you, they won't tell anybody what they do with them. But I mean, you're privy to the Bitcoin wallet.
Yeah. And so far, no money has been deposited. And look, I've talked to the FBI and I've frankly said to them, look, I'm not you, and you clearly know a heck of a lot more than me, but my spidey senses are just telling me something about this guy, because they asked me.
I don't really buy his spidey sense, to be honest. I think his spidey sense is just wanting more attention, views, and clicks.
A long time ago to put the word out, which we did, that anybody who is, doing this as a hoax to get money would be prosecuted by the federal government. And this person wrote back and said, I understand that. I am not in any way hoaxing. This is real. And then the other thing that just got me was, I believe it was the Tuesday after Nancy Guthrie was kidnapped. He sent us this note saying, I know where she is. I know who the kidnappers are. Time is of the essence. That was on a Tuesday. On Wednesday, we got another note from the same person, but said, time is no longer of the essence, meaning, I think, she is no longer alive, right? Well, if somebody is carrying out a hoax, why would they take the immediacy away and say she's no longer alive? That made it feel to me like there's something legit, because why would he take away the incentive to get the money fast?
Or take away the incentive for a bigger payout.
It's just bugged me that there's something about it that I just thought I took more seriously. They have very consciously looked at this. They've tried to find out who this is, but they are not convinced enough to pay that money. And I know that as of a conversation I had with the FBI today.
And so, to be clear, because I think a lot of people,
I mean, it makes sense. They don't know enough, so why would they pay?
are getting confused about all the different ransom notes. Savannah herself made a comment to Hoda Kotb saying, the 2 ransom notes we received, I tend to believe they're real. Those are the ones that originally came to you, correct? And KVOA and I think another Tucson local station?
Yeah. So there are 2 different things we're talking about. These notes that I've just mentioned are people, not somebody who was a kidnapper, somebody who says he knows where the kidnapper is and where Nancy is. The ransom notes you're referring to, yes, there were 2. They were written by the same person. We know that because it has the same Bitcoin address in both. We received the first one along with 2 Tucson stations, the local stations. The second one was sent to just one local station there, K-Gun, but it's from the same person. I know that the FBI believes that those ransom notes are real, that is from the kidnapper. They have done everything they can, from what I understand, to figure out who sent these notes. They were on with my IT team for hours and hours and hours, working with my IT team, and they came up dry. And they could not find it, and they still haven't found out who wrote it. This is a cold case, and they're just waiting for one of those breaks that often comes, but they are at a dead end right now.
You heard from the FBI that they believed those first 2 overtures were really from the kidnappers as opposed to scammers overseas or some ne'er-do-well?
Yes, and they are from the same person.
Holy cow. So when Savannah said that, she must have had that indication from the FBI. They must have told her that they thought that they were real.
Yeah. Now, what I don't understand is that she was going to pay, and for whatever reason, they backed off. They had a reason for backing off. And I know they did something. I don't feel comfortable saying it, but they did, because they had asked me not to way back then. I don't know if it's changed at this point, but they thought they had a way of tracking that Bitcoin address. Didn't work.
Holy cow. And there's been no other communications ever since those.
So that is interesting. They thought they had a way to track the Bitcoin address, and then it didn't work. That's interesting. I think there's got to be a way to at least track a Bitcoin address. Sending it to other projects and coins, that's a different story. But Bitcoin address, they should be able to track a little bit.
Those 2, right? Like there was the first note that said you've got deadlines, right? You've got a Thursday deadline and then you've got a Monday deadline. And then that second one that went to K-Gun, you said. And how was the second ransom note different from the first? What was it suggesting?
I never saw it. I never saw it, but I don't think it change the game from what I'm being told by the FBI, that they believe from the same person. It had to be because the Bitcoin address is the same. And, they just told me that it was from the same person.
And those folks at KGUN never did disclose the contents of their note.
They've never talked about it. We don't know what's in it. We didn't read it, but it didn't change the game. The person who wrote that first note, they believe is the kidnapper, and they have just come up dry.
And we know that they used the same Bitcoin address in the note that went to you and the two stations and to KGUN. That second note, they all had the same Bitcoin
That's
address.
what I'm told.
So the interesting thing is, Harvey.
So I think they're talking about the ransom, people who wrote the ransom note. And then in terms of tracking it, I think they're talking about the FBI. I think.
If you think back, and it's hard now with 64 or so odd days, Savannah and her family did a second or subsequent address on Instagram saying, we understand. We've heard your communication and we understand. And we just now want her back with us so we can celebrate with her. And we're willing to pay. And that to many people sounded like, we've heard what you've said. We understand what's happened. We still want a body back. Like it sounded as though they had made an overture that maybe Nancy died.
I agree. I mean, that's the way I took it as well. Again, if you believe the guy who's been writing us these notes, she died somewhere between Tuesday and Wednesday after she was kidnapped. And I don't know whether that's because, look, and they said in the letter that they would kill her if they didn't get the $6 million by that Monday. So it's unclear whether this was foul play or she died because, she was ill, she didn't have her meds. So I have no idea. But if you believe this guy, it happened somewhere between Tuesday and Wednesday.
So the ransom letters did threaten to kill her.
Yes.
So again, we haven't read these ransom notes, right? They haven't read them, the whole thing. So he's saying that in the beginning, they threatened to kill her. I mean, I don't recall hearing that. I mean, I don't know why we just didn't get a copy of the notes ourselves. Why didn't they tell us what they were? They're going to tell us everything else. Why just not tell us what's in the notes? Doesn't make much sense to me.
All right. And so let's be clear.
And I want to say one other thing.
Yeah.
When I talked to somebody from the FBI today, this person wanted us to repeat that there is still a $1 million, actually $1.1 million reward out there. So, they're hoping, because they believe money can be a motivator here. And that's why they're doing it. But they wanted that word out because they feel like people have kind of forgotten it. But there's a lot of money on the line for information.
And I think it's even up to 1.2 million with the different sources. But 1-800-CALL-FBI. I say it on every podcast, 1-800-CALL-FBI. If you know anything, if anybody acted weird, on February 1st, even 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th of the next week, when the video came out of the masked man, that guy had to be scared. He had to act differently that day. I always say for people who think that someone they know acted in a weird way in those dates, 1-800-CALL-FBI. Harvey, the letters that came out today to you, it seems like there's a mixed message. Like in the first letter, does he say she's dead? And then the second letter to you today, he says, I saw her alive with them in Sonora?
No, he never said she was alive at all. He says she's dead.
But he just said after you talked about when you did your TMZ live today, they sent a second letter saying, quote, I saw her alive with them in the state of Sonora, Mexico. Maybe he's referring in past tense because in the first letter, they said she's dead.
It's past tense. Yeah,
and so now
I saw her. He's saying I saw her alive with them in the state of Sonora, Mexico. My request is not huge. And he goes on. He's talking about, he says he saw her there, but he's talking
past
back
tense.
then.
Yeah. And now he's definitive that
yeah.
Nancy, he says, if this person is truthful, he's saying that Nancy is dead.
Now, again, I talked to the FBI about this. I had a fairly long conversation today. And, it's just, I've gotten to know some of these people and we were just talking. And I said, look, I feel kind of out of place to even say it. But there's just something that's been gnawing at me with these letters that, this guy knows it's a federal crime. He keeps sending these notes. And it was that whole thing about time is no longer of the essence. And they said, yeah, we hear you. But, there are a lot of crackpots out there. So maybe they know something. I mean, I'm sure they do that I don't know. But on the one hand, they seem to be dismissing it. On the other hand, I can tell you they spent a heck of a lot of time trying to track down this guy's email, and they weren't able to do it. I'll tell you, that's the craziest thing about this, Ashley, is that this is 2026.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, it's like the perfect crime that I didn't think that existed anymore, but that you can kidnap somebody from a residential area where there are cameras that people have in their homes, and yet you can't find the car, and that you've got these emails and you can't trace the emails, and you got these Bitcoin addresses. And I can tell you that the FBI did something with that Bitcoin address from the kidnapper, and they actually did something, came up dry there. And I just never thought of the perfect crime being something like this, where somehow you could evade everyone. Now, there were clearly mistakes made, especially by the sheriff. Nonetheless, the FBI came in and they got nothing. And in 2026,
Hard to believe.
it is really stunning.
Yeah, I mean, you've got all of the opportunities for the regular forensics to work, right? A guy's got a bite light in his mouth, which he had to put in and take out, maybe with those gloved fingers, and touch something. Door handles to get in, the actual bracket behind the camera, which he's messing with. There's all sorts of opportunities to find that, right? There's a vehicle that he had to have conveyed Nancy in. He can't take her on a bike or a moped, Then there's the digital trail, and none of this is working.
It's crazy. And we cover so many cases, as do you, where, people make mistakes, they get spotted, and he just disappeared.
Yeah, vanished. And as did she, which is just so. Tell me about the frustration in this latest email from this perpetrator, or at least the person who suggests he knows the perpetrators. I would consider this a perpetrator as well. He feels like millions of dollars have been wasted, yet here I am willing to deliver them on a silver platter, meaning willing to deliver the kidnappers. And he's talking plural. I don't know if he's talking about them in plural or them in the singular sense.
He's constantly talked about them in plural.
He is?
Yeah.
And he seems angry that the FBI is dismissing him.
He's been kind of bent out of shape from almost the beginning, saying everybody thinks I'm crazy. They don't take me seriously. He's gone on and on about this. And he says, at different times, at one point he said he had a criminal record. And I forgot what he said the crime was, but it was some kind of burglary or something like that. And that he was worried that they might try and implicate him. And he would have to go underground, take care of his family, he said. And that's why he needed the money. So, he's kind of given this life story in kind of a weird way over a series of letters. But that's his point. He's saying that I'm going to be put out a lot by cooperating. So make it worth my while.
Well, what doesn't make sense?
Worth my while is a Bitcoin. And now he's saying, give me half a Bitcoin up front and I'll give you the info.
Half a Bitcoin is about $35,000. A full Bitcoin is about 69 or so today. It's gone down since the original overtures, but $1.2 million would certainly guarantee him a whole lot of freedom and protection from whoever it is he fears. It just doesn't make any sense. Are you able to email him back?
No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But and we, he addressed the reward. I don't know. He addressed it after they made it 1 million, but when it was 100,000, he said, I don't trust the FBI. That's why he started contacting us. He said, I don't trust the FBI. So, he said, we're going to you guys. And we ended up doing, social media which he saw. And we said, look, if you don't trust the FBI, give us the information and we'll convey it to the FBI. But now you've got a record through us that you've given us information, so they're not going to screw you out of the money if you really believe they would do that, because we have the record that you gave it to us and we gave it to the FBI, but he didn't do it.
Well, you're playing checkers and maybe he's playing chess, and suddenly he didn't know what to do other than just rant and get angry and just try again. I know your time is precious, and I'm just very appreciative of the time that you've given us. Keep me posted. Let me know if you hear again.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be my second call.
Right?
Honestly, we're giving everything to the FBI when we get it. I just don't think they are looking at this in a real serious way. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just telling you what my spidey senses say. And I may be all wrong here too.
1-800-CALL-FBI. Anybody who sees this, and we've got thousands watching. So thank you, Harvey. I appreciate you telling us about this.
My pleasure, Ashley.
So there you have it. I could have talked to Harvey a lot longer.
So what do you all think about what Harvey had to say there? I mean, a couple good points, but I still don't know if that means the notes were real. But what do you all think?
But he is wall to wall today. Obviously, he's got a lot going on with 2 communications from somebody who is committing a federal crime, by demanding money for information, leading to, where Nancy Guthrie might be. And he's working with the FBI, as you heard, hand in glove, right? That the FBI has spent hours at the offices of TMZ working on their servers and working to try to track these people. Multiple different people have been going through TMZ, making communications in the Nancy Guthrie investigation. Whether they are legitimate or not is not for you and me to decide, nor Harvey, and he freely admits that. But these people are doing this. And if they're not the kidnapper, they're still committing a crime, a federal crime. If they are the kidnapper, holy shit, that is a massive series of crimes. And it is huge to me to learn that these alleged ransom seekers threatened to kill Nancy Guthrie. We had not heard that. I wondered, I assumed, I had thought, but I also thought that the threat was, we just don't turn her over until you play ball. That's also equally a threat when you're talking about a family member. And that the FBI believes that those 2 first notes are real. When Savannah said it, I wondered why. I wondered why she believed the 2 we received, I tend to believe are real. I wondered why. And now perhaps it's because what the FBI told TMZ and the people they were working with at TMZ and Harvey Levin at TMZ, that they indeed believed that those 2 original alleged ransom notes.
And I agree with what Laura just said. That's more than we've heard about any of the ransom notes in the past, right? We never got them. Bella said they were sealed. I don't know exactly what that means, but we never saw any of them in full detail. So the fact that they threatened to kill her in one of those ransom notes, that's the first I've heard of that. So again, when we're not playing with all the information, it makes it difficult. It makes it difficult to make logical conclusions or logical decisions when you're not playing with all the information. It just makes it more tough. But yeah, we didn't hear any of that before until today.
Came from the kidnappers. It certainly does throw quite another wrench into solving the puzzle. But anyway, I wanted to come to you with this additional episode today to make sure you had all of this news. It's pretty big and it's pretty breaking. Who knows where it'll go from here, though. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, the truth isn't just serious. It's drop dead serious.
So remember, check out Ashley Banfield's channel. And there's really not much else to go over today. We'll check out some Tony to see what he's got going on.
This is Hidden Killers Live with Tony Bruschi and Robin Dream.
Well, reporting has now confirmed what many of us have suspected in the Nancy Guthrie investigation. The initial team assigned to work the case by really no fault of their own, the ones that they were assigned to, they lacked homicide experience. The sergeant supervising the response has reportedly never worked a homicide. Seasoned detectives were allegedly moved off the squad before the case even started, and sources inside the department say it was about loyalty, not merit. That's where the problem lies. The critical first hours of the abduction belong to who's ever in the room, and the people in that room may not have been ready for what walked through the door. That's where we're going to be starting today. Your questions in the comments section on Substack, YouTube, Facebook, X, wherever you're watching us. Be sure to leave them. We'll try to get to them. Joining us, as always, Robin Dreeke, retired FBI Special Agent, Chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program, my co-host. And it's a fun day. It's Friday Fun Day. Jennifer Coffendaffer is with us. So we have both perspectives in here today. Let's start, Jen. Sources saying that the sergeant who supervised the initial homicide response to Nancy Guthrie's home had never personally worked a homicide case and had only been a sergeant for about 6 months. Okay, I mean, everybody's got to start somewhere, I guess, but you still don't want it to be your case. You're like, I don't want the rookie on.
So they got Jen Coffendaffer and Robin Dreeke here to the right, both former FBI agents.
This one. But when you hear that, Jen, I mean, what is the first thing that comes to your mind of concern of like, okay, rookie and like rookie mistake? Here's likely what could have been missed. What came to your mind when you heard that?
Well, as you said, this was something that seemed evident by what we saw. In other words, the crime scene being abandoned early and the mistakes made in regards to search parties being called off literally on day 2. We saw the rookie mistakes come to light, and now we're hearing, of course, the source reporting that that's because he was a rookie. So, as you said, as you opened with, I don't think any of us are surprised. And for me, I'm not surprised that Nanos made these calls, because we've been hearing about how he chooses people not based on their abilities, but based on his relationship with them. And whenever you run a department like that, you're going to run into problems like this.
Yeah, my gosh, Jen. I mean, in every organization, because we had one of the comments, why aren't all departments trained in this type of investigation? You are. What happens typically, where Jen and I worked with the Bureau, is you always had a lead investigator that had all the experience. And even if the junior person came in and initially found it, got the tips, got the call, whatever it is, once it gets back to the squad area, it gets transferred to the senior guy. You become a support role until you are mentored, taught, and trained by those senior agents. And what it does is typically it makes you very hungry at a young age with a lot less experience, because you want to be that guy. You want to be the person out in front. You want to be in charge, because you now have all these reps of following in the footsteps of these great masters and Jedis in front of you. But Nanos destroyed that entire. It's so disappointing.
Like I said, everybody, I'm trying to play devil's advocate here for a moment, and everybody knows I'm not a fan of Nanos, but everybody does have to start somewhere. I'm assuming, the sergeant here that was in charge only 6 months. Before that, they had worked their way up, probably under somebody, probably saw a lot of things, and then finally got the title. And you hope by the time you get the title, you got enough reps underneath you that, yes, you're new to the position, but you're not new to that sort of work. Is that what's going on here? I don't know that we truly know the answer to that, but is this something where, obviously we haven't found Nancy yet, but where this looks worse on paper and it makes for a great headline more than it operationally is super deficient in the case? I don't know. Your thoughts, Jen?
Tony, I love this side of you. You're kind and gentle today. No! You find out and you believe this is an abduction, your first call has to be to the FBI, period, end of story. There's not even a check mark in the Pima County statistics that shows they've ever had an abduction, because they haven't, not in this vein. And second of all, even if you look at their homicides, remember, homicide is way different than murders. You look at murders, now you're also down on.
Also, Shadow the Night Owl needs his Hootie snacks, so likes help me get Hootie snacks. So do people subscribing to the channel, as do super chats, super stickers, and people becoming a channel member.
Reps, as we're talking about.
12 in 2025, I think it was, or 2024.
See, this is simple. Call the FBI. Not 3 days later, not after you've processed the crime scene that, by the way, has only one time to ever be processed. After that, it's really much. You got one chance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they just had no one out in front and tell them what to do, saying, hey, and so even if you have the junior guy in charge, there's always someone like right here saying, kind of give the nudges, because that's, you're right. Tony, good job on giving the grace and the positive aspect of this. But, and granted, it could be going on because again, I'll do the same thing. I'll be kind, because it's the lower levels that you want to support because they're the ones doing the hard work. But it doesn't sound like they're doing what they should be doing in the sense of there's no senior experience with reps with the junior guy that's leading this investigation. And what happens is you get the deer in the headlights and you hit fight or freeze. They froze, it looks like, because there's a lot of things they should have done quicker.
What I guess what makes no sense to me about this whole damn thing, Nanos, in my opinion, seems kind of like an egomaniac. He likes the attention. He likes the spotlight on him. And typically that's for good things. You want to be looked at as, okay, you're a hero. You're solving cases. You're doing this. You're doing that. His department actually has a fairly decent track record of solving homicides, although there's not many of them, but it's still there. It is what it is. Why? I mean, like, if at the end of the day, the people below you are going to be a reflection of your leadership, he should know that. He's been doing this 40 some years. Why would you, in something that is truly, this is going to be a high profile case because of who it is. Why would you allow for that, putting somebody on this case that doesn't have the experience when you do have other people that could handle it more efficiently, more professionally, with more experience? I know we go to and maybe this is the answer, the ego thing of, well, some of these people didn't support him, so this is all he has left. But at the end of the day, the reflection of the performance is going to come back at him. He knows it. Why would you be going out there with your weakest link, knowing eventually this will reflect back on you?
It's very simple. Control. He wanted to maintain control, which means he's going to put the people in charge that he can easily control.
Narcissistic people want to be in control, right? This is a great question, Chatty. Jared, what is the backstory behind Shadow the Night Owl? Well, a woman named Linda in the chat, she sent it to me because I've mentioned many times before that a lot of people that had a narcissistic parent, they became night owls because during the day they would be criticized, put down, belittled. It felt like they had to walk on eggshells. They were constantly judged. But there was one time a day that was not the case, and that was at nighttime. Could also be very early in the morning too. But I found that to be true of many people that grew up in that dynamic. That is the origin of Shadow the Night Owl.
And that they side with him. And honestly, and I can't wait to hear what Robin's take is on this. We really just didn't see that much in the Bureau, at least that I saw personally working Crime Matters.
Mm-hmm.
You put the best, and sometimes those guys and gals didn't necessarily jive with the supervisor, but the supervisor knew, let them run. Let them run. We'll wheel them back in if we need to, but let the horses run. I don't remember having anything like this, really.
No, and I'm with you, Jen. And I'm not the, rah-rah bureau guy. I'm very pragmatic about rights, wrongs, and everything else. But when it came to this kind of stuff, whether it's the criminal side or my side, national security, it actually, as a junior agent, it made you really, really frustrated because you felt like you had the reps after 5, 6, 7 years that you could take lead on this. But again, if the big one came in, it went to the senior person on that squad with all the experience and the experience in that particular area. And then if you're lucky and you were a good support person supporting the lead, they'd allow you to be part of it. And then they would test you. Well, we'll give you this to do. And if you can keep your mouth shut, not complain, and do this a good job, we'll give you a little bit more responsibility. So they're constantly doing a really good job. And that's not just Bureau. That's everywhere typically does that. And Jen, great point on Nanos. It's about control, right? And also, Tony, I didn't know the timeline you mentioned. He might have gotten rid of all the good people before this happened, thinking that, hey,
demoted many of them.
Yeah, so think about it. If he's got his mind, nothing ever big happens here. I'll just maintain control, and then boom, and then what happens? Something big. So he don't have anyone left.
I mean, is this, the word that I overuse all the time, narcissistic, but I mean, is this just a narcissistic move where, I mean, did he, pure conjecture and speculation, but is this something where he did see an opportunity? There's going to be a lot of spotlights on this. I can't believe that he didn't think that there's going to be a lot of spotlights on this, although who knows? He doesn't seem to be the brightest bulb. But let's say he did see it coming. Was this a play of, let's put somebody out there who may not be the best, and then, as we know, a lot of narcissists, they like to knock the blocks down and build them back up and go, look at me, I'm saving the day. I'm wondering if this is some sort of a calculation.
That's a good tactic by the narcissist, right? I should make a video about that. How they create a problem and then they come in there and act like they're the savior so they can get the credit. But really, they created the problem, so they should really be not getting the credit. When they're the ones that created the problem, you don't get the savior points when you're the one that created the problem intentionally.
Quietly in the back of his mind of, we're going to let this person fail, and then I'm going to step in. You're going to see me in the spotlight, and I'm going to answer the questions much better than they ever could. All for the ego play. Maybe that's a bit too deep, but I don't know.
It might be deep for Nanos. I think it was.
Yeah.
He's not a deep thinker, right?
It was a little simpler than that. I really think it just came down to, listen, I'm going to put you in charge because you're a yes man. You're new. I'm going to have total control. I'm not going to have to worry about argument back and forth about decisions that are being made because they're going to be my decision. And, that's the last thing you want, by the way. You want people on your team that are going to push back some on the things that they feel strongly about, that you can cut up. That's what we call it. We cut it up and we look at it, and we're, the person that might be the case agent, and they might have 2, 3, up to 10 was the largest amount of agents I had to assign to a case.
Yep.
You cut it up and you work through it. And oftentimes, I know as a case agent, I'm like, you know what? You're right. Let's switch direction on this, or let's try this. That's how it should work.
We did it all the time on the behavior team too. Exactly like that. Whether you're a team leader or fell in another role, whether it's on your squad. I mean, it is literally a team effort to do that. I think it's overconfidence played in too, because we keep talking about his narcissistic tendencies, control. Part of that, I think, he's because of all his time there, he's overconfident. He probably thought this thing was an easy case to solve, maybe.
What damage has been done by these decisions? And is there any rectifying it? Is there any way of correcting any of this at this point? Jen, what's your thoughts?
Well, first of all, you can never get a crime scene back. Second of all, you can never get the first 48 back. Third of all, Nancy's gone. Still no idea where she went, what happened to her. And number 4, we have no pointer on a subject. So that's your answers to all of that, I think. And then I'll go one step further, which nobody's really talking about. And this is why I hate to see this. I cringe when I see this, not because of the reporters again, but because of the message. This is such fodder for a defense team. I mean,
really good point.
But will there ever be justice in this case? Because you think the social media hounds are on this and the creators? Oh.
And that's a good point by Jen. I mean, the defense team is going to have a field day if it ever even gets to that point with all the contradictions and things Sheriff Nanos has said. And they're going to use them to what? Create reasonable doubt. That's going to be what they try to do. Now, we're a long way away from that because that requires an arrest. That requires a charge. We're a long way away from that. But down the line, that's what a good defense attorney would do.
Oh my gosh, wait till we see a defense team when now they've got 100 reasons why the guy that probably is the guy that they're going to end up arresting isn't the guy.
Well, just the debacle of the gloves. You know, who is one of the glove a perpetrator glove, or is it a glove of an ERT agent? I mean, just a glove debacle for one thing. You're right. I mean, just the handling of the crime scene because of how it was handled at the onset. That's going to be a lot of fodder. Oh my gosh! Yeah, this whole thing is like ripping the rug of hope out, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, didn't the glove turn out to be like somebody that worked at a restaurant down the road or something?
Yep.
It's like
there's 16 gloves though, and I saw an interview. And I can't remember what date it was because he's done a lot. Even after he stopped his pressers, he still was, you know, interviewing with NBC and the local affiliate, where he said that wasn't even the glove. You got to watch it where he's like, that's not even the glove, something like that. In other words, not the glove everybody's been talking about. There were 16 gloves, everyone.
Does he even know what glove? I mean, at the end of the day, does he even know what one it was? Here's a thought I had on the glove, with it being the guy from the restaurant. I'm going to guess this guy has reps in throwing gloves out his window every day. I'm guessing after he leaves the restaurant as a line cook or whatever he's doing, gets in his car, rolls down the window, takes them off, boom. It's probably a pattern. That might be why there's 16 gloves from 16 or 8 different dinner services. I don't know. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, it's just, it's maddening. The fact that there's really no levers to pull for repercussion on poor decision making by leadership in these sort of positions. Is that a flaw in our system? Do we have a system that relies too much on people doing the right thing, being professional, being good, doing the right thing, and we also then rely on our citizens to pick the right person as well? Is this something that maybe should be re-examined, because we end up with a lot of folks like this in these sort of positions, and everybody's like, how did this happen? You chose them. That's how. You didn't pay enough attention and you picked the person.
You know, Tony, at the end of the day, you said it. He was chosen. He was elected. And the amount of power in these sheriff's offices, it's very different than the Bureau.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of checks and balances. You are all powerful, really. You're kind of like the SAC, I guess, in a field office. So the head of that field office is pretty much all powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But still accountable. They can still be removed. We've seen it. And I'm with you, Jen. You know, he's got too much power as an elected official in charge of this, and you can't remove. I mean, if this happened inside the Bureau, and I'm so sorry, Jen, I totally jumped on you on that one. But it's so accurate. He can't be removed. Like, so if this was inside the Bureau and you had a couple of case agents, too young, assigned to a case, I can guarantee you, I don't care what program it is, they won't be doing that again anytime soon. The supervisor's going to be having a good talk to. It might be shifted squads between what they do. I mean, there's always repercussions, especially if it's an outward focused case, and it's going to not just impact the case, but the reputation of organization, which goes to that feeling of you can trust the organization to do right. All those things matter when it comes to optics as well as execution. So there would be major shakeups inside of the Bureau if that happened.
Let me give you one example really quick, Tony, and Robin, is if you look at the New Orleans case.
Yes, I know exactly. Yep, that's what I was thinking of. Go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
ASAC, she got on there and she said, I mean, despite all the information that was out there, the banners waving, ISIS, everything that was known, she said, well, this isn't necessarily a terroristic event, when basically you just needed a pulse to sort of see that. She could have just said it a little bit differently and maybe gotten away with it. She was plucked out of there so fast it made your head spin.
Yep.
Because you said when it comes to a public reflection of the Bureau and not looking like you know what you're talking about, you're gone.
Yeah, and they sent the DAD down, a deputy assistant director, I think, from headquarters to handle that until they got someone new in there. I remember that very specifically because we're all watching like this. Oh my God, did she just say that? And they fixed it.
I wanted to help her. I was like, oh.
That's what happens when you get called in over because that was New Year's Eve, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you put somebody who is new and a novice and doesn't have experience in that role.
Brand new ASAC.
Brand new ASAC.
Yeah, it's I think it's one of those things that the general public gets shocked by, but it's how the system is working as designed right now. The system needs fixing, and that's ultimately, I think, what the solution is to something like that. We can complain about it all day and how this is, but at the end of the day, that's why people vote, and that's why people need to pay attention.
And that's a good question for both of you. Why are there sheriffs that are elected? I don't understand why some organizations they're appointed, but like the town council, and then others they're elected. I mean, why? Because every time there's an elected official, it seems to really go sideways sometimes. Have we seen a good one?
Well, I think one issue is, and I'll use the Bureau. You have to, in my opinion, and thank goodness the number 2 at the Bureau came up this way, because I'm affiliated with him from time back in Houston. But you have to have somebody that came up through the ranks, earned their way, made their mistakes, made their bones, and then comes up. And typically the best people are people that never want to get into management. And they decide to, for whatever reason, either they're coaxed into it by upper management, or they're just like, oh my God, I cannot work for this idiot who has 3 years in and now he's my supervisor. So I got to make a move here. Something like that. But yeah, my point is it happens.
And that's why Louis Free was such a good director for us too, because he spent time as an agent first. He's like 10 or 12 years before he went to private sector. So, I mean, he was a great director. He's in, I think, with you too, right, Jen, when you came in?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, Louis, yes. He was.
Beloved.
and this is the type of guy he was. I got a quick personal story. So he was coming through the DFW airport. At that time, I had responsibility. I was SRA there. And when he came through, normally all the directors have this huge SWAT contingent.
Right.
He didn't want that. Like he was carrying his, it might have even been a revolver back then. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. We were 10 millimeter. So anyway, they assigned me to be his bodyguard. Just me. He didn't want anybody else. He didn't even really want me. Talk about an agent's agent. This was an agent's agent, and that's what you got to have. Although Sheriff Nanos, he came through the ranks. I will say that.
Yeah. And something happened. Fell in love with his own story.
Look at the Duggars. There's 19 kids that came out of the house. Some are good, some are not.
Someone goes sideways. Yeah, pretty bad.
Speaking of which, your thoughts in the comment section on this on Substack and YouTube. We'd love for you to weigh in.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment.
Well, there's really not too much else going on tonight. All the videos were shorter too. So Brian did a video, but it was really only a half video. Ashley Banfield did a video, but it was also only a half video. And then we did the TMZ video. Again, I'll be curious what all of these ransom notes say, but we have no idea yet. We just don't know. Because bald is a choice, Rooster. Balding is not the choice. Bald is a choice. That's when you own it, which is good. United says Sheriff Grady Judd would have had grid searches and called in FBI within hours. I totally agree. They should have done that. Tony Bruschi, Brian, of course. Shorty, any JLR updates? As far as I know, he might be in some deep doo. Washington State has some things going on with him. Plunder talks about his stuff sometimes. But whenever I talk about him, there's all sorts of wild stuff. Comes on in the chat, his defenders. And again, they're just, they're a little bit defensive about him, but there's a lot of smoke with JLR, right? That's the problem. Like back in the past, there was all sorts of things going on. And Magnolia, she's not perfect either. And to her, unfortunately for her, that situation with whatever it is, Project Veritas, is hurting her credibility with this in some people's eyes. Yeah, we've gone over a bunch of his D. I like Gavin. Gavin's genuine. What flavor position you going for? What do you mean flavor? I mean, it would be a lot. This would be a pretty big lie for Magnolia to say all that, honestly. For Magnolia to make up years and years of abuse and make up 24 strangulations and black eyes, that would be a lot. Project Veritas. So Magnolia was complicit with a Project Veritas scheme. They were basically trying to entrap the Washington Post. And she was trying to get them to say, if I say Roy Moore did this, will you guarantee that he won't win? So they're trying to get the Washington Post to say something that would make them complicit or guilty of something. That was the goal. So it wasn't necessarily a straight up false accusation, but let's not get it twisted. It still wasn't good. What Project Veritas and her were up to were not good in any way. Jody, welcome. Mace, welcome. CC was on TMZ a couple days ago. It was good. Yeah, I think, did we watch that? The genetic genealogist, CC? Maybe you could watch that one perhaps before we close it down here. I like CC. I did not know that about John DePetro. What part of Rhode Island is he from, Maureen? Well, we will watch the first one with the new ransom note.
Well, as promised, Savannah Guthrie is back on the job. She is at Today, and she was actually on the air when they started the show this morning. Remember, she had been back to visit them once during the last 2 months while she was dealing with her mother's disappearance. But this was the first time she went on the air, and everyone was watching to figure out what was her mood going to be? How could she handle this?
Would she talk about it?
Would she talk about it? This is how they started the day.
Pretty shot of the sun coming up. Good morning. Welcome to Today on this Monday morning. We are so glad you started your week with us, and it is good to be home.
Yes, it is good to have you back at home.
Well, here we go. Ready or not?
Yeah.
Let's do the news.
Yes, so good to have you back. All right, those folks out on the plaza to welcome back our dear friend. Yay.
Some beautiful signs out there.
There's been signs for so long. They're going to be so excited to see
I'm
you.
excited to see them. Give them all a hug. Been really feeling the love so much. Thank
welcome
you.
back.
Good to be back.
Great to have you.
You know what struck me about this?
Her
dress.
The yellow?
Which is the idea of coming
Spring
home.
and,
no, coming home. Like yellow ribbons.
I thought of it more as sort of a new beginning of spring.
I'm thinking of it as yellow ribbons.
You went with Tony Orlando and Dawn when they tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree to invite back the soldiers. No, that's not nothing.
I don't want to trivialize it because that's actually become a thing too with missing people.
Without question.
With you know wearing yellow, so that really struck me.
It's also a sunny color. I mean, she does seem as upbeat as you can be. She's delivering the news. It's obviously extraordinarily difficult. She was out there for part of it with Jenna Bush Hager, and she was clutching her hand in the beginning, looking at all of this.
when they went outside.
The outpouring of love. She was holding her hand the whole time and looking at the signs. It's hard to feel anything but warmth over this.
Good she's back, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good she's back. And, you know, it's awful what she's going through. This is a cold case. You know, I will share a little bit of news with you. The person who has been incessantly contacting us.
Although
saying,
stopped for a while.
Stopped for a while. Yeah. We got another letter today from this person, an email saying, I know where her body is and who the kidnapper is. Give me half a Bitcoin and I'll tell you. And this person has been really persistent, knowing that if it's a scam, it's a federal crime.
Right. But they also made the point that they wanted to make it clear that they have nothing to do with it.
Right.
They've been out of the country, but who knows?
We forwarded right,
as we have in the past.
Right.
And for whatever reason, and this is the thing we haven't figured out, you have to assume that the law enforcement, they believe that this person is not legit. Otherwise, they would have advised Savannah to pay the money.
Can we just be really transparent? I think you're right that the law enforcement doesn't.
There's something.
I just can't figure out why.
Well, why
There's
not take a
something-
flyer? The price of Bitcoin is much lower now. These are like, you could just take a flyer and see what the person knows. The most you lose is 20 grand, 25 grand.
I'll tell you why. My spidey senses tell me that there's something about this guy, because one of the emails he sent said early on, time is of the essence to do this. And then the next day he said, time is no longer of the essence. If he was pulling a scam, why would you say time is no longer of the essence?
Right. You want to keep the value high.
You want to keep
of
the
your
value
information.
high.
Yeah.
And the fact that he said this made me think, this guy knows something.
Yeah, it's a way to look honest as well, though.
I'm not, look,
Right.
I'm not FBI.
We're
I
not
don't
privy to
know.
all the information they are, but
you're talking about
just
the
from the
psychology,
outside
yeah.
looking in, it sure seems like this person knows something.
Hi, this is Hannah from Boston. I'm really glad to see Savannah back on the Today Show. There's been some controversy online that I've seen where people are saying that they think she came back too soon. But when something so traumatic happens in your family, I feel like it's only up to her to decide when the time is right to come back. So whether that's today or a year from now, there's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
She needs to continue on with her life, and I'm glad to see her back.
100%.
And
people online who are saying that about her
Just
need to get lives
the
and let her live hers.
Yes,
She's the only one who gets to make that decision.
100%.
A piece of what?
Well,
Hmm.
Initial disappearance.
I can say if they get a viable profile, genetic genealogy will definitely solve it, and it will be solved within weeks.
Hey everybody, it's Jackson Buhai here with TMZ. Today I am joined by Miss Cece Moore. She is an expert genetic genealogist, and today she is here to talk to us.
I hear you, Jackie. I mean, people are friendly here. You just have to talk about, I don't know, whatever floats your boat. You'll see.
About the Nancy Guthrie case. Miss Moore, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. Now, today marks month number 2, if you can believe that, since Nancy Guthrie's initial disappearance. And there are a lot of questions revolving around evidence found at the scene relating to DNA. Being a genetic genealogist expert yourself, can you provide us with some insight as to how we can leverage that DNA to find the suspect and what that process looks like?
Well, when Nancy wasn't found immediately, I really strongly believed that genetic genealogy would be the answer to this case, like it has so many others. But for us to be able to help law enforcement identify these perpetrators or this perpetrator.
And yeah, this guy named Jackson for TMZ, I think he's their best interviewer, honestly. And he's young. I don't know how old he is. Mid-20s, early 30s at latest, right? But he's probably mid-20s. And I think he does a great job.
We need to have a viable DNA profile. And that is apparently the challenge in this case. I find it really hard to believe that this person or persons didn't leave DNA behind at the crime scene. But from my understanding so far, it doesn't sound like they've been able to create a viable single profile of an unknown individual in this case. What I've heard is that there are mixtures, and mixtures are certainly workable for genetic genealogy. Many of my successful cases have involved mixtures, but there are simple mixtures and complex mixtures. And this sounds like it's a complex mixture, which means there are more than 2 people in it. And
that's good to know. Simple versus complex. Complex means there's more than 2 people. And
very likely more than 2 unidentified individuals. So a simple mixture would be if there was Nancy's DNA and 1 unknown male. And then we could be pretty confident that that would be viable for genetic genealogy. But if it is Nancy's DNA and 2 or 3 unknown male profiles, it really depends who is the majority in that, whose DNA is the biggest proportion. And if you have several unknown people in it, you wouldn't know which person or persons are relevant to your case. I also am concerned about contamination, because if they're working with a complex mixture, that means it could have been taken off a surface, say a doorknob that many people have touched, or another surface in the home. And it's possible that none of those individuals are the perpetrator in this case. And so it's really disappointing, because if they were able to single out that DNA of the person who took Nancy, then there's no doubt in my mind he would be identified and relatively.
So this is Cece Demore, I think her last name is, but the more important part is she's a genetic genealogist. So she's examining and going over with Jackson how the DNA that was found could help the case. Right now, we have that sample from inside the house. It wasn't a good match or even a good sample for CODIS, but they're going to try to do genetic genealogy on it. And we don't necessarily know, though, the percentages of how many is from one person. So it has to be over 28%, according to Reagan, who is our forensic expert. I haven't seen her recently, though.
Quickly through genetic genealogy.
And when you say, complex mixtures usually involve more than two people, how long does it take to sort through those complex mixtures and identify the DNA that person belongs to?
Well, it really depends on the proportions. If there was one unidentified male in that mixture who had contributed 40% or more to it, then we could very quickly work with that. The scientists I work with are incredible. And
yeah, so Reagan said at least 28%. So I guess Cece's saying if it's over 40, it's got a very good chance.
I am pretty confident they would be able to what's called deconvolute, extract out that individual's profile. But if everyone that is of interest in that mixture has less than 40%, maybe there's only 20% for the person of interest, that is where we start really running into challenges. And to my knowledge, there are not yet any techniques to create the type of profile that we need for genetic genealogy in that case. So the type of profile we use is very different than what law enforcement uses traditionally. We use what's called a SNP profile, and it has hundreds of thousands of genetic markers across the genome. And so the methods for deconvoluting a SNP profile are very different than the methods for deconvoluting an STR profile, short tandem repeat, which is what law enforcement has used for decades already. And so they've made a lot of progress in that with those traditional profiles, because they've been working with mixtures for literally decades. And you very often run into mixtures in sexual assaults, in stabbings, or when you're working with transfer DNA, or what's known commonly as touch DNA, because you are detecting such small amounts of DNA, and it's really common for there to be more than one contributor. But with SNP profiles, we've only been working with law enforcement since 2018. And so that's really when the attention started being paid to what we're capable of doing. And then scientists became really interested in the idea of pushing our part of the science forward. Before 2018, most people...
By the way, folks, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Spank the like button there. It helps me pay for Hootie Snacks for Shadow the Night Owl next to me. Remember to subscribe to the channel too, if you haven't already. And say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. We got a pretty awesome group here. So feel free to be yourselves and say whatever comes to mind.
Kind of rolled their eyes at us. They were like, oh, they're just doing genealogy, or they're just helping adoptees. And so we've seen huge jumps forward in creating these SNP profiles and the science behind that. But still, we're only not even 8 years into that. And so I am very confident that as time progresses, we will see better methods for dealing with these mixtures. And I think that's why the sheriff said, it might take a year, right? That the technology doesn't exist yet. I'm sure there are multiple people that have pushed this up to the top of the priority list. and are working as fast as they can to try to create a deconvolution method that could help in this case and many others.
And since 2018, in your career, have you seen a case like this? Obviously Nancy Guthrie, she lives in a very deserted environment, not a lot of cameras around. It was pretty easy for the perpetrator or perpetrators to get away. And it seems like DNA might be the key here to solving this case. Have you seen a case hit such a dead end to where DNA opened the door to find that person, whether it be 6 months to a year from when it was initially conducted?
Oh, absolutely. We are usually last resort with genetic genealogy. It's typically used after every other avenue of investigation has run cold. Now, we're starting to see agencies using it earlier and even in tandem with their traditional DNA profiles. We saw that in the Koberger case, and we've certainly seen them attempt to do it in this case. But the majority of my cases have been cases that were extremely cold. I've helped solve cases from before I was born. And so it's not at all unusual for genetic genealogy to come in and be the key. But for us to be able to help, the key to that is always that we have to have biological material to work with. We can't work with that traditional profile that law enforcement creates for their databases for CODIS. And that is the one that is used in court. And so a lot of cases have that, but if they don't have the biological material available for us to go back to, then we can't help, because we have to reanalyze that from scratch using more advanced technology than had been used previously.
I'd be curious the biological material she's referring to.
And what's amazing in the last 8 years is how fast we've seen that ability advance. We used to need a fair amount of DNA on these cases, and now we just need the tiniest amount, even just some skin cells, which is why we can use transfer DNA or touch DNA. When we first started doing this, that was much more challenging, but the scientists have rallied behind genetic genealogy now. And I think that, like I said, this case may also help to fast forward some of those deconvolution methods. I did hear recently that the sheriff, or there was an insider who said that's exactly what was happening, that there was some new technique that was being pushed to, be finished earlier because of this case. And I strongly suspect that is a deconvolution software package, perhaps by the company Astrea, which is creating those packages to offer to law enforcement and to labs that are working with law enforcement. And so I'm really hoping what they did is maybe they had it planned for later in the year or next year. And they said, you know what, let's push this up to the front of the line and get it done more quickly. Because of course, the Guthries need answers, the community needs answers. And if genetic genealogy can get that profile to work with, they will be the ones that provide answers, in my opinion.
You just mentioned briefly that genetic genealogy is usually the last card in the deck, if you will, once all other investigative options have been exhausted. Does the fact that they pivoted to genetic genealogy so quickly in the investigation say anything grim to you?
No, that's actually great news. And it's exactly what I had been hoping to see since I helped solve the first active case using genetic genealogy way back in 2018. It was something that everybody saw as a cold case technique because the Golden State Killer was the first, big public case that people heard about. But we can stop criminals in their tracks. We can stop people from becoming serial offenders and potentially do away with serial killers and serial rapists if they decide to use genetic genealogy immediately in these investigations. Because the problem is you don't know if you're going to get that hit in CODIS until you've processed the DNA, created that profile, and uploaded it. And then if you don't, and you don't have any other leads to follow, you've got to start all over. And so we saw in the Koberger case, and I believe in this case, the attempt to create those in parallel. If you have enough DNA, split that DNA, give some of it to the crime lab to create that STR profile, and then have a lab, and it has to be an outside lab because none of the crime labs have the capability to create that genetic genealogy profile. So then send some of the DNA out to do that at the same time. So as soon as you don't get that hit in the law enforcement databases, you can turn to genetic genealogy, or you can even have that started in progress. I've certainly been working cases where they ended up getting a new CODIS hit as we were in progress too. So sometimes we are working on it and then they get a new upload in CODIS and it solves the case. But there's no reason not to be trying, especially when there's public safety issues. I can't help going back to the Koberger case again. He very likely was stopped in his tracks from victimizing more people. We don't know in Nancy's case if this is just targeted to her or if because they failed to get a ransom, they could try again. But I think its best use, genetics genealogy best use, where it can be of most value to society, is when it's used right away to stop that violent criminal from hurting anyone else.
Something I also want to touch on that you mentioned is that even the smallest amount of DNA can solve a case through genetic genealogy. And I'm wondering, if that's the case, and forgive me if I've asked you this question in another form, but why is this taking so long? Why is this deconvolution process taking, over a month and a half at this point?
Well, unfortunately, it seems that the only sample that they feel is viable in this case is a complex mixture. And so if it were a simple mixture, I think we'd already have answers, or we'd be very close to having answers. But based on what the sheriff has said and what I've heard from other insiders.
So that was important. Complex mixture, not a simple mixture, which makes it harder to tell. And as far as we know, we don't know the percentages either yet, but that's very important.
This is a very difficult sample with which to work. And that is the issue. And that's why I've talked about in other interviews, a second crime scene. If and when there is a second crime scene found, meaning somewhere where Nancy was held, a car she was taken in, or if, unfortunately, she is found deceased at some point, there's a second opportunity to collect DNA from that perpetrator. So if they did not successfully find his DNA at this crime scene, I'm very, very hopeful that there will be another opportunity to do so. This case doesn't just go cold and nothing else happens. We saw in that case in Australia where a grandfather was abducted very recently, right around the same time as Nancy, that they ended up finding the location where he'd been held for a while. And so that gave them additional evidence. And that's what made me think about that in this case, is she went somewhere, right? She went in somebody's car. If she was alive, she was held for some period of time. If she was deceased, they had to have taken her somewhere. And so that person should be very concerned, because even if they don't have a viable DNA sample right now, either technology will advance fast enough that we will be able to get one, or there's another opportunity where their DNA could be found, with further investigation, with some other object or crime scene or Nancy herself that can lead to further collection possibilities. I still believe his DNA has to be at that initial crime scene somewhere. It's just a matter of whether it got collected or it could still be collected. DNA is hardy. I've seen amazing crime scene investigators that have just had a hunch and swabbed something, and it ended up being the key to the case. It's really hard to know, right? When you go in a big home like that or around a big home, what do you swab? But if he was there for what the theory has been 42 minutes or so, and he had what appeared to be that bite flashlight in his mouth, he's not going to keep that in his mouth all that time. And as soon as he touches his mouth, takes that out of his mouth, he's got DNA on his gloves, on the outside of his gloves. If he touches anything in the home or outside the home, which we know he touched the camera and that camera mount, there almost has to be DNA there. And so I'm hoping there's more items that they're in the process of trying to.
And that's what we've heard Ashley Banfield mention too, right? That flashlight on the mouth and then the glove to the door, all over that area. You'd think there's got to be something there, right? But it's all collected either way now. Like there's no going back in time and collecting it. It's either been collected or it hasn't. Right? That's the problem, right? You're not going to find new DNA now. This was all within the first 48. And it's like whatever they got is what they got.
Extract DNA from. And sometimes that can take a while. If you've got dozens of swabs or hundreds of swabs, they have to test every one of those, hoping they're going to find that relevant DNA sample. And so that takes time unless you get lucky. If there had been say a mixture of blood, if there had been Nancy's blood and this unknown male's blood, again, I think this case would already be solved. But they didn't get lucky in this case. And they're dealing with a much more difficult, challenging DNA sample to work with.
And, I know the Sheriff Nano said a year from now, we could possibly have an answer. But at the rate that you see technology relating to genetic genealogy evolve, what's your time frame?
Well, I think with so much attention on this case, it will help push that forward faster. If there are scientists out there that are bioinformaticists and want to make a name for themselves, they are hopefully already working on advanced deconvolution methods. I've even heard recently that there is equipment that's going to be coming out in about a year that's going to be able to help with this. And that's rare because usually it's processed the same, but then the data that comes out is what our bioinformatics scientists work with to try to deconvolute it. But I hear from an insider there are some advanced machines that are going to help with that deconvolution process, which would be brand new because that's not something that we're currently using. And
that's a new thing, right? New machines to help with the deconvoluting process. Fascinating.
And so, this case and many others have helped to push the technology forward for genetic genealogy to be used. I think all of it's fast-tracked now.
Interesting. So an insider has told you that there is actually new equipment specifically for this investigation that has been dedicated.
Well, it wasn't for this investigation. It was to address these complex mixtures because we deal with mixtures in many cases, right? You can understand with sexual assaults, it's very common. With the technology getting more and more sensitive where we can pick up smaller and smaller types of DNA samples, that means you're more likely to have mixtures. So this is something that was already being worked on. But like I said, I think it will be fast forwarded because we've got such a high profile public case that involves a complex mixture. And there's so much attention to that right now.
And just to round this off, Cece, I know I'm asking you to shotgun here. But with this technology at hand and at the disposal of the authorities, if you could quantify into a percentage or maybe a score out of 10, the likelihood that the perpetrator will be caught, what would that number be?
Well, it's really difficult to speculate because it's going to matter on what DNA is found and what happens here. If it just goes totally cold and they only have this one crime scene, then, obviously they're struggling with that. But if there is additional opportunities to collect DNA from that perpetrator, as I said, a second location or an object, or Nancy is found, dead or alive, then I think absolutely he or they will be identified and it will be solved. But if all they have is this one sample, this complex mixture, I think it's going to take some time because even if they're fast forwarding it, it's probably going to be months before that software package or equipment is able to deconvolute this sample. If it is, there's no guarantee that it would because I don't know the proportions, right? If they told me it was 30%, I'd say, oh, that's doable. Even though it's not something that has been done to my knowledge, it can be. But if they told me it's 10% or they have 4 unknown males in it and they're all only 10% or 5%, that's pretty unlikely to ever be the evidence that solves this case. So if they get a viable profile, genetic genealogy will definitely solve it, and it will be solved within weeks, in my opinion. And that is because the FBI genetic genealogy team is ready to go on this. If they get that viable SNP profile, they will be working night and day on this. And as I've said in other interviews too, I believe they will likely serve warrants on the big databases that we're not allowed to use for genetic genealogy.
So it begs the question, what databases are you allowed to use?
Well, despite the fact there are over 50 million.
Remember, we heard the answer to this question already with Brian Etten and her. The top 3 are not allowed to be used. It's the other ones. They would have to see if they can get an exception for the top 3. So Ancestry, 23andMe, and whatever the other one is.
in people who have taken direct-to-consumer DNA tests, the 3 largest companies have barred law enforcement from using their databases for this purpose. So we are limited to the 3 smallest databases: GEDmatch, Family Tree DNA, and DNA Justice. And so that makes these cases much more difficult to solve quickly. And that's why I believe if they get that viable SNP profile that they can upload to the genetic genealogy databases in this case, I believe they will serve warrants on those big companies to try to find him sooner. And so if you're dealing with 2 million profiles to compare against, which is what we typically work with, compared to 50 million, that means that person could likely be identified in minutes, hours, days versus weeks, months, or years.
Cece, you've been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining.
Jackson's a very good interviewer. I like him. He does a good job, Jackson. But that was really it, because there's really nothing else. I mean, and let's face it, we do well on this channel when we talk about the case, but the last week or so, there really hasn't been that much new going on. We're scraping the bottom here with new ransom notes. What was the other recent thing? Not much though, right? Just like other kinds of theories. We're here, but we're scraping. We might go over some of the Dr. Koenig again tomorrow, because at least it's interesting in the fact that it's a court. And then this week, tomorrow, is closing arguments. Isn't that interesting? And then I guess later this week is the verdict. Now I think Brian's back in Arizona. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, about the ransom notes, Autumn, we did. I mean, I didn't know there was a threat to kill in there. But Harvey said there was, which was interesting. Thank you, Danielle. Old school, casual sweater. Who, what, Bella? Who's being very performative? Maybe all the channels, perhaps, I guess, right? Are you really, Rammer? Stationed in Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. Are you an American or are you something else? Well, whatever it is, thank you for your service to whatever country you serve for. It's one of those things I think a lot of people take for granted. Oh, did he really, Marina? I guess he did the interview. What in the beginning of that episode, was he not? Was he not in Arizona? I guess he wasn't out there very long then if he's already back. I have to pay closer attention. Yeah, Kelly, I kind of think he's toast. I think Dr. Koenig is toast because his son's testimony and the eyewitness testimony just doesn't look too good for him. It doesn't look too good when eyewitnesses see you on top of someone hitting them with a rock. Not too good. But again, innocent until proven guilty, right? So we'll figure that out later this week. And we'll see what other cases float on by. Thank you, Maureen. Maureen's on the ball. She's sharp. Like I say, I was reading the chat, and sometimes when I read the chat, I don't always look at the screen as much as I should. And I agree, Bella. Savannah deserves some grace. I agree. Like I said, I'll say it again. I don't blame Savannah for going back to work at all because I just don't know what else she would do. I mean, what are you going to do? Like watch the law enforcement and the FBI do their jobs? Like, what is she going to be able to do? I just don't think it's going to be that much. Like, it sounds good to say, but in the process of doing it, I mean, she wants to be able to like live her life. She just want to be able to have them rob her of her joy. And I totally get it. I totally get it. And again, I don't think it's easy for her. I think she's in a lot of pain. But at her age there, 84, Nancy, I mean, what are the odds that she's alive at this point? Not very high. Jared, what do you think about Annie not sharing her feelings like Savannah had? Honestly, she's probably a little nervous too, considering all of the accusations, right? Like, you know how when Luke Daly did that interview, everyone was kind of like going over the whole thing with a fine-tooth comb? I kind of think Annie and Tommaso are under the same impression that, hey, we're not going to say much because if whatever we do, it might just blow up on our face. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's how they were thinking of it. You have a good one, Mace. Glad you caught the tail end here. And I agree with that, Bella. Routine is healthy. Good question, Roxanne. I am not sure. You don't have to put on that red light, Roxanne. I agree, Maureen. I don't know what she would do. I don't know what she would even do. I think also in a case, if someone's younger and they're still alive, I think it does change the dynamic a little bit. And she came back, like Elizabeth Smart case, she came back. I mean, she was found. So it was pretty much a miracle. Thank you, Miss Kim. Thank you, Pamela. You have a great night as well. The Paradise trial, Tim. I'm not sure if I know about that one. Yeah, Maureen, Annie and Tommaso are probably under a lot of scrutiny. And it's probably not very fun to be them right now either. But granted, though, like if they were to be guilty somehow, then it would be warranted. But right now, you can't say that right now. I mean, to me, until they have suspects and have made arrests, you can't really rule anyone out, but you can't condemn them either, right? It's that middle ground. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Autumn. Make a lamp. A leg lamp, Rooster? But all right. I got to do some homework for this interview here tomorrow with Christian John. Hopefully we have a good conversation. And we'll see what else. Have a good night, Tim. Perhaps I'll try to chat with Kat somehow to see if I can come to a solution with that. Yep, I'll be live tomorrow night. Interviews during the day. It's just going to be recorded. So thank you everyone for watching. Like I said, like the video on your way out or your way in. Likes are for the Hootie Snacks, by the way. Right on, Rammer. I appreciate that. All right, Holly, you have a great night too. Have a good night, everybody. I apologize for the little bit of drama earlier. I did not expect that to occur. But sometimes life just comes around, you know. Have a great night, Jackie. I will see you all on the morrow. Thank you, Autumn.